Welcome back, dear friend. Tonight we are diving into a story about the human body, discipline, and the pursuit of strength in the ancient world. We'll uncover the fascinating history of how soldiers, long before gyms and protein powders, trained their bodies into powerful machines of endurance and battle. From the rigorous life of Spartan warriors to the disciplined Roman legionnaires, and even the lesser known fighters of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. These men pushed the limits of their physical and mental endurance in ways that continue to inspire and intrigue us today. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy this type of content that merges myth and mystery. And hey, let us know where you're watching from. What time is it for you right now? Sometimes our stories are better than sleep, and other times they help you dream louder. It's time now to dim the lights, turn on a fan for some gentle noise, and let's cover what we have for tonight together. Close your eyes, dear friend, and imagine yourself drifting back far, far before the days of great stone cities, before empires carved their names into history, before armies marched in glittering lines across the earth. We are returning now to the beginning, to the very roots of military training, to a time when the first humans began to shape not only tools of survival, but the bodies that carried them. It is difficult for us to picture life in such an age because so much of it was raw, unrecorded, and lived through instinct. Yet, if we are quiet enough, if we listen carefully to the rhythm of the wind, we can almost sense it, the heartbeat of humanity in its earliest forms of discipline and strength. The first soldiers were not yet soldiers in the sense we understand. They were hunters, guardians, wanderers, moving with the herds, climbing ridges, chasing prey across plains, lifting stones to build shelters, and carrying firewood to keep their families warm. The human body was trained by necessity long before anyone thought to design a training system. Strength, endurance, and skill were not luxuries. They were survival. Every movement of daily life was a lesson. Running barefoot across uneven ground toughened the feet and trained balance. Throwing spears at wild animals honed accuracy, power, and timing. Wrestling with rivals for dominance prepared men for struggle. Carrying carcasses, water jars, or bundles of wood created resilience in shoulders and backs. There was no separation between exercise and existence. To live was to train was to live. But as human groups grew larger, something shifted. Tribes began to clash, villages needed defense, boundaries needed protection. In these moments, the role of the warrior emerged, not just as a hunter of beasts, but as a defender of people. For the first time, the body was shaped not only for the chase of food, but for the clash of battle. Picture a small community gathered in a clearing. Fires flicker as stories are told of enemies nearby. Younger men listen, their eyes wide, their hearts racing. Soon, they will need to stand alongside the elders. To prepare, they rise early at dawn. They run to the river, plunging into cold water to awaken their strength. They lift heavy logs to mimic the weight of weapons. They spar with one another, using wooden clubs, learning how to block, how to strike, how to endure pain. This was the dawn of organized training. There were no uniforms, no schools, no scrolls of instruction, only repetition, only observation. Young warriors watched their elders and copied them. If the elder could hurl a stone farther, the young man would try until his own arm ached. If the elder could withstand a fall without crying out, The youth would bite back his own pain. In this way, the traditions of endurance were passed silently, carved into flesh and bone. As time moved forward, early civilizations began to appear in Mesopotamia, in the Nile Valley, along the rivers of China and India. And with these civilizations came the first organized armies to defend fields of grain, to protect irrigation canals, to guard temples and kings. Rulers began to gather men into ranks. Suddenly, training was not just a personal duty, but a collective system. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, city-states like Uruk and Ur established warrior classes. Clay tablets speak of soldiers drilling with spears and shields. They were taught to stand in formation, to move as one body rather than as scattered hunters. This was something new, discipline beyond the individual, discipline that belonged to the group. The human body was now not just for survival or family, but for the strength of a kingdom. In Egypt, where the Nile flooded with predictable rhythm, soldiers trained under the sun to carry bows, spears, and chariots. Their training blended daily labor with martial skill. Rowing long boats up the river built endurance in arms and shoulders. Dragging sledges of stone built strength in legs and backs. Archery practice, repeated for hours, sharpened not only the muscles of the body, but the patience of the mind. In China, records from the early Zhou dynasty describe warriors drilling with long spears, learning both precision and rhythm. War was becoming an art form, and training the body was becoming a science. And yet, beneath all these civilizations, the roots remained the same. Training was about more than power. It was about endurance. It was about resilience. It was about learning how much the body could carry, how far the legs could march, how long the lungs could sustain breath, and how strong the heart could beat without surrender. Imagine, if you will, one of those early warriors. Perhaps he is a young man in Mesopotamia, gripping a spear taller than himself. His body is lean, carved by long days in the fields and long nights drilling under torchlight. He breathes deeply, feeling the weight of the weapon, testing his grip, repeating the movements taught by his elders. Around him, dozens of others do the same. Step, thrust, block, withdraw, again, again, again. The sound of wood striking wood echoes through the training ground. This is not glamorous, it is not yet legendary, but it is the foundation of every army that will come after. Over generations, the patterns grew more refined. Leaders realized that men who trained together not only fought better, but trusted one another more deeply. Training created bonds. It gave rhythm to life. It gave confidence to the young and purpose to the experienced. And so, training began to be ritualized. Some tribes sang songs as they marched, letting the rhythm guide their steps. Others incorporated chants and dances that mimicked combat, teaching timing and coordination. In Africa, warriors learned to leap and strike in rhythm with drums, each movement both a display of strength and a rehearsal for battle. In the Americas, young men ran across vast distances, building lungs and legs that could carry them for days without food. The universality of this is striking. No matter where you look in the ancient world, training appeared. It did not matter if one lived in desert, forest, mountain, or plain. To protect, to fight, to endure, one had to condition the body. And so the origins of military training were not in gyms or schools, but in rivers, forests, and open fields. The tools were not iron bars or polished weights, but stones, logs, bows, and spears. The philosophy was not written in manuals, but lived through experience, through trial and error, through the hard lessons of pain, defeat, and victory. As you drift deeper into this thought, notice how timeless it feels. Even today, when we lift weights, run trails, or push ourselves to exhaustion, we are echoing these same roots. Our bodies, after all, are ancient. They were shaped over thousands of years for these very tasks: to run, to climb, to fight, to endure. Training, in its truest form, is simply remembering what we were always built to do. So as the campfires of ancient villages fade into the darkness of your imagination, know this: the origins of military training were not only about strength, they were about survival, about unity, about the shared human journey of turning flesh and spirit into something greater than either alone. This is where the story begins. The roots of Spartan, Roman, Persian, and every other warrior tradition lie here, in the earliest attempts to discipline the body for struggle, to condition the heart for courage, and to shape the will into something as enduring as stone. And now, with this foundation laid, we can travel onward into the specific paths different civilizations took, exploring how each culture added its own character, its own philosophy, and its own brilliance to the timeless art of training the human body. Close your eyes again, dear friend, and picture the land of ancient Greece. The air is warm, dry, and heavy with the scent of olive trees and dust carried by the wind. In the distance, low mountains stretch toward the sky, and nestled between them lies a city unlike any other. This is Sparta, a place that has lived for centuries, in myth, in legend, in whispers of discipline and steel. To the Greeks, Sparta was not just another city-state. It was an idea, a way of life, a living experiment in human endurance. And at the heart of that experiment was training. When we speak of the Spartan ideal, we are speaking of something both simple and impossibly difficult, a way of shaping men into warriors, so complete, so devoted, that their very name would echo through time. The Spartans believed that the strongest defense of their city was not its walls of stone. Indeed, Sparta was famous for having none, but the walls of the flesh and bone, the bodies of its soldiers, each one a fortress unto himself. The process of creating such soldiers began early, almost unimaginably early by our standards. In Sparta, a child was not truly considered to belong to his parents, but to the state. At birth, infants were inspected. If a child appeared too weak, too fragile, or too deformed, he was not permitted to live. As harsh as this seems to us now, it reveals the foundation of the Spartan mindset. Only the strongest could serve, and only service mattered. Those who survived were raised in homes until the age of 7. At that age, they were taken from their families and placed into the Agoge, the state-run system of education and training that would define the rest of their lives. Imagine, if you will, a 7-year-old child today, still tender, still small, still wide-eyed with wonder. In Sparta, such a boy was handed over to harsh instructors who stripped away softness and replaced it with endurance. The Agoge was not simply physical, it was a complete reshaping of body, mind, and spirit. Boys learned to read and write only enough to follow commands. For literacy, was considered secondary. What mattered most was discipline, loyalty, and strength. They were drilled in obedience, punished for mistakes, and rewarded only rarely. If they grew hungry, they were encouraged to steal food. But if they were caught, they were beaten, not for the theft, but for failing to do it skillfully. The lesson was clear: survive by cunning and never be caught unprepared. Physically, the training was brutal. The boys ran long distances barefoot, their feet toughened by rough earth and sharp stones. They were made to wrestle each other endlessly, their small frames straining, their muscles developing strength through constant struggle. They learned to endure beatings without crying out, to march under heavy burdens, to sleep on reeds, and to live with little food. Hunger was a constant companion. Cold nights tested their will. Pain was their teacher. And yet, out of this suffering emerged something extraordinary. A Spartan boy became lean, wiry, quick, and strong. His mind became sharp, his instincts tuned to danger, his loyalty to his comrades unbreakable. He was taught that his life was not his own, but part of a greater whole. The Agoge built not individuals, but parts of a machine, a phalanx of warriors who would stand shoulder to shoulder in battle, shields overlapping, spears pointing forward, hearts beating as one. As they grew into young men, their training intensified. By the age of 12, they were expected to run faster, fight harder, and carry heavier loads. Endurance was pushed to its limits. They practiced with weapons, spears, swords, and shields, learning not only the art of killing, but the art of never hesitating. Their instructors did not coddle them. A mistake in training was met with harsh punishment, for in battle, mistakes meant death, not only for the individual, but for the man beside him. And yet, even as their bodies hardened, the Spartans were also being trained in something more subtle. They were taught silence, to endure hardship without complaint. They were taught wit, to answer with sharpness and brevity, what we still call laconic speech. They were taught unity, to fight not for personal glory, but for the collective survival of Sparta. These were not mere soldiers. They were citizens shaped into instruments of war. By the time a Spartan reached adulthood, he had already endured more than most men of his age in other lands. At 20, he entered full military service, where training did not end, but simply shifted into constant maintenance. Daily drills kept the body sharp, group exercises ensured cohesion, even games and festivals doubled as preparation for battle. To be Spartan was to train without end, to live in perpetual readiness, to embody discipline so fully that it ceased to feel like a choice. The Spartan ideal, then, was not simply about creating the strongest man. It was about creating the most disciplined. Strength could be found anywhere, but discipline, the ability to endure hunger, cold, pain, and fear without surrender, that was rare. And so, it was discipline, more than muscle, that defined the Spartan soldier. Their diet reflected this as well. Meals were simple, often a black broth made from pork, vinegar, and blood. By modern tastes, it was unpleasant, but for Spartans, it symbolized austerity. Food was not pleasure, but fuel. Their clothing was minimal, their possessions few. Life was stripped down to its essence, to endure, to fight, to survive, and yet, for all the harshness, there was pride. To be Spartan was to belong to something greater. When they stood together, in their phalanx, shields locked, spears braced, There was no force more feared in Greece. Each man knew the one beside him had been through the same trials, endured the same pain, and would not falter. That trust, forged through endless training, was their greatest strength. Even their women, though not soldiers, embodied the ideal. Spartan mothers were known to hand their sons their shields before battle with the words, "Return with it," or "on it," meaning, "Come back victorious," or "Come back dead," but never come back a coward. This shared cultural expectation reinforced the discipline of the men, binding every Spartan into the same web of duty. When outsiders looked upon Sparta, they were often astonished. Other Greeks admired their discipline, but also found them strange, even frightening, for in Athens, men studied philosophy, poetry, and art. In Corinth, men traded and built wealth, but in Sparta, life was pared down to a single purpose, the creation of warriors. The Spartan ideal was both admired and feared, admired for its strength, feared for its inhuman demand. And yet, here is the paradox. This training, this life of relentless discipline, was not just about war. It was also about identity. To be Spartan was to be part of an ideal greater than oneself. The Agoge, with all its cruelty, gave meaning. It told each boy, each man, that his life was a thread in a larger tapestry, that his suffering was not wasted, but shared, and in that sharing, perhaps, there was a kind of peace. As you drift deeper into this thought, imagine standing among them. The air is heavy with dust. The sound of feet stamping in unison rises like a drumbeat. Spears gleam in the fading light. You feel the press of bodies beside you, the weight of the shield on your arm, the sharpness of the spear in your hand. You are tired, hungry, sore, and yet you are not alone. This is the Spartan ideal: unity, endurance, and the unshakable strength of a body and mind forged in hardship. And so, dear friend, we see how Sparta shaped its sons, not through comfort, not through luxury, but through a lifetime of deliberate difficulty. They believed that greatness was not given, but carved out of flesh, out of bone, out of willpower that refused to break. This is why their name endures, why their legend still whispers across time. For in the Spartan ideal, humanity glimpsed what it means to give oneself fully to discipline, to live as if every day were preparation and every breath a duty. This is the Spartan way, harsh, unyielding, and unforgettable. Now that we have walked through the philosophy and the foundation of the Spartan ideal, dear friend, let us lean in a little closer and watch how these men truly shaped their bodies. If the Agoge was the forge, then the workouts, the daily drills, the endless repetitions, the testing of muscles against stone and earth, were the fire and hammer that sculpted the Spartan frame. And so, we drift into the training grounds of Sparta. It is early morning, the first pale light spilling over the hills. The air is cool, the ground still damp with dew, but already young men and boys gather, their eyes sharp, their bodies lean, their minds braced for another day of struggle. For Spartans, strength was not about vanity, not about shaping muscles for admiration. It was about survival. It was about carrying the weight of armor, the weight of a shield, the weight of responsibility that never left their shoulders. Unlike today, there were no carved iron dumbbells or polished training machines. There were no mirrors to admire their progress. Their gym was the natural world, Stones, logs, sand, rivers, and their own bodies pressed against each other in contests of strength. Every exercise had purpose, every drill tied directly to the needs of war. One of the simplest, yet most effective, was lifting stones. Imagine a Spartan boy, perhaps no more than 12, crouching before a rock heavy enough to challenge him. He grips it, his small hands scraping against the rough surface, and with effort, he heaves it to his chest. He staggers, his knees trembling, his back straining, but he does not let go. He carries it a few steps, drops it, then tries again. Over time, his body adapts. His arms thicken, his back broadens, his legs learn to hold steady under weight. This is not play. This is the foundation of war. For in battle he will carry not stones, but shields and armor, sometimes the wounded body of a comrade, sometimes the weight of survival itself. Logs, too, became their teachers. Groups of boys were ordered to lift long, heavy trunks and run together across the training field. Each step required coordination, for if one faltered, the log would tilt, crash, or crush fingers beneath it. In this way, they built not only muscle, but teamwork. A log carried alone was a burden. A log carried together became a lesson in unity. Wrestling was another cornerstone of Spartan strength. Day after day, pairs of boys locked arms, grappling on rough sand. There were no mats, no soft ground, only the sting of grit against skin, the pain of falls, the press of another's strength against one's own. To wrestle was to test not only muscle, but endurance, cunning, and willpower. A smaller boy learned to use leverage. A larger boy learned not to waste strength. There were no trophies, no applause, only bruises and the quiet respect of having endured. To this, they added endless running, not gentle jogs, but sprints across uneven terrain. Barefoot and unprotected, their legs became whips of sinew, their lungs bellows of air. They chased each other up hills, down slopes, through fields of sharp grass, across rivers cold enough to numb the skin. For in battle, speed was life, the ability to close in on an enemy quickly or retreat and regroup when the tide turned. But perhaps most importantly, Spartans trained with their own weapons, heavier, harder, more punishing versions than they would ever carry in war. Their swords for practice were deliberately weighted, often twice the heft of a real blade. Their shields were heavier, their spears longer and more awkward. Day after day they drilled, swinging, thrusting, blocking, until their arms ached and their shoulders burned. And then they did it again. The philosophy was simple. If you can fight with something harder, then when the real weapon is placed in your hand, it will feel light as air. Picture the scene. A line of young Spartans, sweat dripping from their foreheads, each one gripping a massive practice sword. Their instructors shout commands. They thrust together, the sound of wood slicing the air in unison. They step forward, they block, they strike again. Hours pass. Their arms feel like lead, but they do not stop. This is discipline. This is how muscle is built, not only in flesh, but in habit. Spartan strength training was never isolated from endurance. Rarely did they focus on one thing at a time. A boy might lift stones until his arms trembled, then be ordered to sprint across the training ground, then wrestle with a partner, then march with a heavy log. This combination, lifting, running, fighting, created a body that could do anything at any moment without warning. and in battle, where chaos reigned. This adaptability was priceless. Even games became training. They played contests of pushing, pulling, racing, and carrying. They climbed trees, scaled rocky slopes, and leaped over streams. The natural environment was their playground, but also their school. Balance, agility, speed, and strength were woven together into a single fabric of ability. It was not only the body that was tested, but the will. Imagine holding a heavy stone overhead while your arms shake, sweat stinging your eyes, your body begging you to stop. The instructors would stand nearby, silent, waiting. To drop the stone before commanded was failure. To endure until told to stop was strength. In this way, they learned to master not only muscle, but mind. What is remarkable is how closely this resembled what we now call functional training. Modern athletes might swing kettlebells, flip tires, or run obstacle courses. The Spartans did the same with what nature offered them. They trained movements, not muscles. They trained for life, not display. Their daily schedule reflected this balance. Mornings were often filled with drills, running, marching, weapon practice. Afternoons might bring wrestling or strength work, lifting, carrying, or sparring. Evenings brought reflection, sometimes instruction in discipline, sometimes silence. There was little rest, and yet, through repetition, their bodies adapted, becoming engines of endurance, and the results were visible. A Spartan warrior was lean, muscular, but not bulky. His frame was built for speed, his endurance legendary. Foreigners who saw them remarked not on their size, but on their power, their composure, their aura of unstoppable discipline. But remember, dear friend, this strength was never an end in itself. Unlike today, where fitness might be pursued for appearance, Spartans had no time for vanity. Every ounce of strength was tied to survival, to duty, to the city they lived and died for. The black broth nourished their bodies, the endless drills hardened their muscles, and the bonds of shared suffering shaped their spirits. Imagine now, as you drift deeper into this thought, a Spartan at rest after a day's training. His body aches, his skin is covered in dust, his hands blistered from the grip of stone and wood, and yet he does not complain. He knows that each ache is a step toward becoming unbreakable. Each blister is proof of discipline. Each drop of sweat is a promise to his comrades that when the time comes, he will stand beside them and not falter. This is the essence of Spartan strength workouts. Not glamorous, not easy, not even varied in the way we might imagine. They were relentless, repetitive, punishing, but through that punishment, they built bodies that could march for miles, fight for hours, endure hunger, cold, and exhaustion, and still hold the line. And so, dear friend, we see the Spartan method in full. Lift what is heavy, carry what is burdensome, wrestle what resists, run until breath itself becomes an enemy, and never, ever stop before the work is finished. This was their secret. This was their strength. The world remembers them not because they lived in comfort, but because they trained without end, shaping themselves into something beyond ordinary human limits. And in the quiet spaces of their lives, in the training fields, in the dusty mornings, in the sweat and silence of endless drills, the legend of Sparta was written not with ink, but with muscle, discipline, and the refusal to surrender. This, dear friend, is the story of Spartan strength. When we think of strength, we often imagine the body in moments of power, the sudden lift of a heavy stone, the strike of a sword, the clash of shields. But for the Spartans, strength without endurance was incomplete, like a flame that burned brightly but went out too quickly. Endurance was the deeper fire, the steady heat that never faltered, the ability to keep going long after others had fallen behind. If their strength made them formidable, it was their endurance that made them nearly unstoppable. Let us step into their world again. It is dawn in the valley of Sparta. The sun has only just begun to crest the mountains, and the mist still clings to the earth. The air is cool, but already the sound of feet striking the ground in unison rises in rhythm. A group of Spartan youths runs across the fields, their bodies lean, their breath controlled. They are not running for pleasure, nor even for sport. They are running because in Sparta, the body was trained to move without end, to carry burdens farther than thought possible, to endure suffering without breaking. Running was the heart of Spartan endurance. From the youngest age, boys were expected to run barefoot across rough ground, their soles hardened like leather by years of contact with stone and thorn. To run barefoot was more than tradition, it was philosophy. Shoes could be lost in battle, but feet, hardened by training, were always present. They sprinted across dirt tracks, dashed through rocky hills, and crossed rivers, cold and swift. In time, the act of running was no longer just exercise. It was survival made ritual. Long-distance marches were just as critical. Imagine the sight of hundreds of young men moving as one, spears at their sides, shields slung over their backs, their bodies bent but unbroken beneath the weight of armor. Day after day they marched, learning to cover miles without pause, to push past the ache in their legs, to ignore the burning in their lungs. Where other soldiers might collapse from fatigue, Spartans were expected to arrive at battle not only standing, but ready to fight. Their training was relentless, because war itself was relentless. But endurance was more than running and marching. It was swimming across rivers, learning to move through water with the same determination they showed on land. It was climbing rocky slopes, gripping stone with tired hands, pulling their bodies upward despite fatigue. It was training in the heat of the Greek sun, sweat stinging their eyes, their throats dry with thirst, yet pressing on. The Agoges did not spare them hunger. In fact, hunger was part of endurance training. Food was deliberately scarce, rations small. The boys and men were expected to live with empty stomachs, to train while hungry, to fight through weakness. By doing so, they learned that endurance was not only about legs and lungs, but about the will to keep moving when the body cried for rest. And pain, yes, pain was a teacher as well. Spartans were taught to withstand it without complaint. In some rituals, boys would be flogged at altars to test their ability to endure agony without crying out. While cruel to modern eyes, it served the same purpose as their endless runs and marches, to prepare them for the realities of battle, where pain would be constant and survival demanded silence and focus. Their games mirrored these lessons. They played contests that lasted for hours, testing not who was the fastest or the strongest in a moment, but who could outlast all others. Wrestling matches stretched long into exhaustion. Foot races were repeated until legs felt like lead. Tugging contests with ropes or logs dragged on until fingers bled. Every activity was a quiet rehearsal for the endurance demanded by war. Consider the weight they carried. A full set of Spartan armor, the shield, the breastplate, the spear, could weigh upwards of 70 pounds. Add to that the supplies of a march, the exhaustion of sun and dust, the endless repetition of movement. And yet, Spartans carried these burdens as if they were extensions of themselves. To drop one's shield in battle was the greatest shame. Better to collapse and die than to let the shield fall. In this way, endurance was tied not only to survival, but to honor. Picture, if you will, a Spartan line marching for days toward battle. The sun rises, the sun sets, dust clings to their skin. Their sandals, if they wore any, wear thin against stone, yet their feet move with steady rhythm, their breaths in time, their bodies trained not to falter. The youngest feel their legs ache, but the memory of training drives them onward. Each man knows that he is not just carrying himself, but his comrades. If one falters, the line weakens, and so they press forward, one step at a time, until the enemy lies before them. What made this endurance possible was not just the body, but the mind. The Spartans cultivated what we might call mental endurance, the ability to suppress the urge to stop, to master the inner voice that begged for relief. They learned to ignore hunger, to quiet thirst, to push through sleepless nights, to march through darkness with the same determination as through daylight. In this, endurance was not only about distance, but about time. It was about refusing to yield, no matter how long the trial. This endurance extended into battle itself. Battles in the ancient world were not quick affairs. They could stretch on for hours, lines pushing back and forth, shields smashing, spears thrusting. The weight of armor grew heavier with each passing moment, sweat soaking the body, muscles screaming with fatigue. And yet, the Spartan was expected to hold his place, to endure, to fight until the very last. Their training in running, marching, fasting, and suffering all culminated here in the ability to continue fighting when others would drop their weapons in exhaustion. Even rest was part of endurance. Spartans learned to sleep lightly, to wake quickly, to endure long nights with little comfort. Their beds were often made of reeds, their cloaks thin. Sleep itself became training, a reminder that comfort was fleeting and readiness was constant. And so, endurance in Sparta was never one thing. It was the sum of many trials, the endless running, the heavy marches, the fasting, the pain, the sleepless nights, the long games, the weight of armor, the silence in suffering. Piece by piece, it shaped a body that did not break and a mind that did not falter. When we look back now, it is easy to romanticize their discipline, to imagine them as invincible. Yet the truth is perhaps even more impressive. They were human, like us, with bodies that ached, lungs that burned, and stomachs that growled. But through training, through repetition, through the quiet acceptance of hardship, they became something more. They became men who could endure not just for themselves, but for one another, for their city, for an ideal that demanded everything. As you let this thought settle, dear friend, picture once more that line of Spartans, shields glinting, feet pounding the earth, breath steady as the sea. They are tired. Yes, they are sore, but they are moving forward, step after step, never faltering, never breaking. This is Spartan endurance. Not a flash of strength, but the endless rhythm of willpower carrying them farther than others believed possible. And with this, we see how their training was not only about the muscles that could lift or strike, but about the spirit that could walk endlessly into struggle, unbowed, unbroken, enduring until the very end. Strength could build the body, endurance could steady the breath and the legs, but without the mind, without discipline, rooted deep within the soul, even the strongest warrior would falter. The Spartans knew this. They understood that the mind was the true battlefield, that before a spear was lifted or a shield raised, a war was already taking place inside the heart of every soldier. And so, just as they trained muscles and lungs, they trained silence, obedience, courage, and the ability to suffer without breaking. Let us return now to that training ground, the sun rising slowly above the hills, the dust curling up from bare feet, striking the earth. Around us are the sounds of exertion, of weapons clashing in drills, of boys wrestling in sand. But listen closer, and you will hear something else. The quiet, the absence of complaint, the stoic acceptance of hardship. For in Sparta, to cry out was weakness, and weakness was not tolerated. From their earliest days in the Agoge, Spartan children were taught to master their emotions. Hunger, pain, cold, and fear were constants in their lives. To give voice to these things, to weep, or to beg, was to reveal softness, and softness, in the Spartan worldview, was dangerous, not only to the self, but to the whole phalanx, to the line of men who depended on each other. A moment of weakness in one could open a crack for the enemy to exploit. And so, the first lesson of mental conditioning was silence. Endure without complaint, suffer without sound. This training was reinforced through harsh punishments. If a boy failed in his tasks, he was beaten. If he cried out, he was beaten further. If he stole food and was caught, the punishment was not for the theft, for theft was encouraged as a lesson in cunning, but for the failure to remain undetected. Every mistake was a chance to sharpen not only skill, but inner control. Imagine a group of boys lined up, thin from rationed meals, their eyes dark with determination. Their instructor walks before them, his gaze sharp, his hands holding a switch. One boy shifts uneasily, his stomach growling with hunger. The instructor sees it, calls him forward, and demands that he stand still. The boy braces himself. The switch cuts across his back, and the pain blooms. But the boy says nothing. He clenches his teeth. He holds his silence. And in that silence, he learns mastery. Mastery over his body, mastery over fear, mastery over the natural urge to cry out. This was the Spartan way. But silence was not the only lesson. They were also trained in wit, in sharpness of speech. The Spartans were famous for their brevity, their cutting remarks, what we call laconic speech even today. Why? Because to say little, and say it with strength, was to show control. Words, like energy, were not wasted. A Spartan might answer a long question with a single phrase, often one that revealed courage, defiance, or dry humor. This brevity itself was a form of mental discipline, teaching them to remain focused, to value clarity, to avoid distraction. Mental conditioning also took the form of constant tests. Boys were deliberately placed in difficult situations to see how they would respond. They were left with too little food, too little clothing, too little comfort. They were made to survive with less, to adapt, to invent solutions. This trained resourcefulness, the ability to think calmly in crisis, to find a way forward when others might despair. At religious festivals, the Spartans practiced rituals of endurance that pushed the mind to its limits. One of the most infamous was the whipping of boys at the altar of Artemis Orthia. Crowds would watch as young Spartans endured lashings, sometimes until they collapsed, sometimes until they died. To modern eyes, this was cruelty, but to the Spartans, it was the ultimate demonstration of mental conditioning to prove, before the gods and the city, that the mind could conquer the body's screams. And yet, mental conditioning was not only about suppressing pain, it was also about cultivating loyalty. Loyalty so deep that the individual ceased to exist apart from the group. The phalanx, the Spartan formation, depended on each man standing firm, shield locked with shield, no gap, no weakness. Each soldier was taught from boyhood that his duty was not to himself, but to the man beside him, to the whole of Sparta. This mental training forged unity, creating soldiers who would rather die than break formation. Even fear itself was trained. From an early age, Spartans were told stories of bravery, of sacrifice, of men who stood to the last. Fear was acknowledged, but it was stripped of its power by constant exposure to hardship, darkness, hunger, exhaustion. These became familiar companions. When real battle came, the mind was already conditioned not to panic, not to flee, but to stand with quiet determination. And within this, there was a kind of paradoxical freedom. For when fear and pain are no longer enemies, when the mind is trained to master them, a person becomes untouchable. The Spartans cultivated this state, a mental stillness, a certainty that no matter what came, they would endure it. And in that stillness lay their strength. Picture it now, dear friend. A Spartan camp at night. The fires burn low, casting flickering light across tired faces. The men sit silently, sharpening weapons, repairing shields, saying little. They are hungry, their bodies sore from the day's training, their beds nothing but reeds. And yet, there is no complaint, only calm, only focus. They have been trained for this since childhood, and their minds are as steady as the mountains around them. Mental conditioning also extended into death itself. From a young age, Spartans were taught that dying for their city was the highest honor. This belief stripped fear of its sharpest edge. If survival was not the ultimate goal, but honor was, then the mind could remain steady even in the face of certain death. The famous last stand of Leonidas and his 300 at Thermopylae was not a spontaneous act of bravery, but the ultimate fruit of a lifetime of conditioning. They faced the overwhelming Persian army, not with despair, but with calm acceptance. Their minds had been trained for this moment, and so Spartan mental conditioning was not one lesson, but many: silence in pain, wit in speech, resourcefulness in hardship, loyalty to the group, calm in fear, honor above death. Together, these lessons forged a mindset as unyielding as their shields. As you let this settle into your thoughts, imagine yourself as one of them. Feel the hunger in your stomach, the ache in your limbs, the sting of a switch across your back. Feel the urge to cry out, to rest, to quit, and then feel yourself refusing, holding still, breathing deeply, enduring quietly. This is the mind of a Spartan, unbroken, unwavering, unafraid. It is here, in the invisible training of thought and spirit, that the true secret of Sparta lay. Muscles may tire, lungs may falter, But a mind that has been conditioned to endure can carry the body farther than it ever believed possible. And in that truth lies not only the story of Sparta, but a lesson for us all. The Roman Empire, dear friend, was not built in a day, nor was it held together by chance. Behind its endless roads, its gleaming cities, its stone aqueducts and amphitheaters, there was something more enduring, the discipline of its soldiers. The legions of Rome were not merely men with weapons, they were machines of flesh and will, shaped through training so rigorous, so deliberate, that for centuries they became the model of military power. Close your eyes now and picture it, a Roman training ground at dawn. The air is cool, the mist clings to the earth, and rows of men stand in silence. Their helmets catch the first light of the rising sun. They are waiting. At a signal, they begin to move, not in chaos, not in noise, but in unison. Their shields rise, their spears thrust, their sandals strike the earth in rhythm. This is not war, but it might as well be, for the Romans trained as if every day were a battle. Where the Spartans were raised in harshness from childhood, the Romans built their soldiers from grown men. Most recruits arrived as farmers, shepherds, or laborers. Their hands were strong, but their discipline was unshaped. And so, the Roman army took these men and broke them down, not to weaken them, but to remake them into something greater. Legionnaires, the backbone of empire. The training began with the body. Soldiers marched, always marched, but these were not short marches. A Roman recruit was expected to cover up to 20 Roman miles in a single day, the equivalent of nearly 30 kilometers, while carrying his full pack. And what a pack it was! Imagine the weight: a shield of solid wood and iron, a short sword at the hip, javelins, armor, a helmet, tools, rations, and often stakes to build camp fortifications. In total, it could weigh over 70 pounds. The legionnaire carried not just weapons, but his life, his shelter, his share of the army's burden. To march under that weight, day after day, through heat, through rain, through mud and stone, forged bodies of steel and minds of iron. But marching was only the beginning. They trained to run as well, not in freedom, but in formation. To move as a single unit, even at speed, required extraordinary discipline. Each man had to match his stride to the man beside him, his shield position to the one next to him, his thrusts and strikes in harmony with the whole. This unity was the essence of Rome's strength. Where other armies fought as individuals, the Romans fought as one. Weapon training was relentless. A new recruit might spend hours each day thrusting with his gladius, the short Roman sword, but he did not train with a light weapon. Instead, he used a wooden sword twice as heavy as the real one. His shield, too, was weighted, thicker and heavier than the one he would carry into battle. Why? Because by training with greater burdens, the real thing felt almost light, swift, effortless. Day after day, hour after hour, they drilled, thrust, step, shield up, thrust again. The rhythm became second nature, the movements flowing without thought, until the body itself became the weapon. Their training grounds echoed with this repetition. Rows of wooden posts stood like silent opponents, each scarred from countless strikes. Against these posts, men practiced the killing thrust again and again, learning not to slash wildly, but to stab with precision, to aim for the vital places. Roman generals often reminded their men, slashing looked impressive, but thrusting killed. And so, the thrust was drilled until it became instinct. Beyond the sword, recruits trained with the pilum, the heavy throwing javelin. It was no ordinary spear, designed to pierce shields and bend on impact. It could not be thrown back by the enemy. Soldiers practiced their throws until they could release, in perfect unison, a storm of iron raining down upon the opposing line. Imagine the sound. Hundreds of pila whistling through the air, striking wood and flesh, breaking enemy formations before the clash even began. And yet, Roman training went beyond weapons. It extended to construction, for the legions did not simply fight battles, they built the empire as they moved. Soldiers were trained as engineers, as laborers, as craftsmen. At the end of every march, no matter how long, they built a fortified camp. Trenches were dug, walls raised, stakes driven into the earth. Each man knew his task, and the camp would rise with precision, safe, defensible, secure. This discipline made the Roman army not only a force of war, but a moving city of order and strength. Discipline was the heart of it all. A Roman soldier's life was not his own. He ate when told, marched when told, fought when told. Disobedience was punished swiftly and harshly. Cowardice in battle could mean death, not only for the man, but for his unit. One of the most dreaded punishments was decimation. If a cohort showed cowardice, 1 in every 10 men was executed by his comrades. The survivors carried the memory of that lesson forever. It was brutal, but it bound them together in fear and loyalty. Yet training was not only about fear, it was also about pride. To be a legionnaire was to be part of something greater than oneself. The eagle standard of the legion was sacred, and every man was conditioned to defend it with his life. Songs, rituals, and ceremonies reinforced this sense of belonging, of being one brick in the great wall of Rome. The mind was shaped as carefully as the body until the two were inseparable. Physical endurance was tested constantly. Soldiers swam rivers, climbed hills, carried logs, and practiced mock battles with full armor. They sparred with each other, not gently, but with the ferocity of real combat. Bruises, cuts, and broken bones were not rare. They were part of the process. To survive training was to prove one's worth, and the training never ended. Even seasoned soldiers, men who had fought in battles, were drilled day after day. The army believed that idleness bred weakness, and weakness could not be tolerated. A legion on campaign did not rest after a march. It built camp, drilled, repaired weapons, and prepared for the next day. This constant motion kept the army sharp, its men honed to perfection. Now picture a legion assembled for inspection. Thousands of men stand in ranks, armor gleaming, shields aligned like a wall, spears upright. The general passes before them, his gaze sharp. Each soldier knows that a single lapse in discipline, a single failure to maintain his gear, could bring shame. And so, every helmet is polished, every sword sharpened, every shield flawless. This attention to detail was not vanity, it was survival. For an army that lived in perfect order could march through chaos without faltering. The result of all this training, dear friend, was not only soldiers, but professionals of war, men who could march 30 kilometers with their burdens, then dig trenches, then fight for hours, then build a camp, then wake and do it all again. Men who could face fear with calm, who could fight in formation without breaking, who could obey without hesitation. These were the Legionnaires, the beating heart of Rome. As you let this picture unfold in your imagination, think of the sound, the synchronized thud of thousands of feet striking earth, the rhythmic clash of wooden swords against posts, the sharp whistle of javelins slicing air, the quiet determination of men whose lives were shaped by discipline. It is almost hypnotic, this endless cycle of training and order. And perhaps that is why Rome endured so long, why its legions marched farther than any army before them. For their strength was not in one man, but in the collective. Thousands of bodies and minds trained to act as one, to move as one, to endure as one. And so, the Roman training ground was more than a place of drills. It was the forge of empire, where men were hammered into soldiers, and soldiers into legions, and legions into the unshakable wall of Rome. Now, having walked through the structure, the weapons, and the discipline of the Roman legionnaire, we turn to something even more quietly remarkable. Their endurance, strength, and skill alone would not have carried Rome to the edges of the known world. It was the ability to endure, to march, to fight, to labor, to sleep lightly, to rise again without complaint, that made the legions an unstoppable force. Imagine the first light of dawn spilling across a Roman training ground. Mist clings to the grass, dew cools bare legs and feet, and the sound of sandals striking the earth rises in steady rhythm. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of men move as one, each step measured, each footfall coordinated. This is not chaos. This is endurance in motion. Every soldier carries armor, weapons, rations, and tools. Every step strains their muscles, tests their lungs, challenges their resolve. And yet, they continue, step after step, mile after mile, hour after hour. Endurance for the Romans began with marching, long, grueling, relentless marches. A legion might be expected to cover 20 Roman miles in a single day, roughly 30 kilometers, often over rugged terrain. Some days they carried packs weighing more than 70 pounds, sandals ground against their feet, straps chafing, blisters forming, muscles screaming. And yet, there was no pause until the march ended. If a soldier fell behind, he was punished. If a man faltered, he was reminded of the unit, of the legion, of the empire that depended upon him. But the marches were only the beginning. Soldiers were trained to run in formation, moving swiftly while maintaining perfect cohesion with their comrades. Imagine hundreds of men, shields locked, spears thrust, boots striking earth together. To run as one requires immense concentration, precise timing, and unwavering focus. Each man was aware that the man to his left and right depended on him. A single misstep could shatter the line. And in training, mistakes were corrected immediately. Beyond marching and running, Roman endurance extended to the daily drills that pushed the body and mind to exhaustion. Soldiers practiced mock battles for hours on end. They carried weighted shields, wielded heavier swords than they would use in combat, and simulated thrusts and parries tirelessly. Bruises and cuts were constant companions. Sweat poured down their bodies, hair stuck to their faces, muscles quivered, and yet the drills continued. Repetition forged habit, habit forged instinct, and instinct, in battle, meant life. Even construction work was part of endurance. After a long march, soldiers were ordered to build fortified camps. Trenches were dug, walls raised, wooden palisades erected, fires laid, sentry posts arranged. Every soldier knew the tasks by rote, every movement precise, every nail and stake in its correct place. This work, often exhausting, was not punishment but preparation, endurance in labor translated into endurance in combat. A soldier who could dig a trench after a 30-kilometer march could stand at the front of a battle line without faltering. Food scarcity was another deliberate test. Recruits were given only modest rations, enough to sustain activity, but never enough to indulge. They were trained to carry on, even when their stomachs growled, to fight and work and march with limited energy. The mind and body learned to rely not on comfort, but on resourcefulness and determination. Endurance became not just physical, but mental. Their training extended to swimming and river crossings, skills essential for campaigns across Europe and the Near East. Soldiers carried packs and shields while navigating icy water, their bodies chilled, their limbs resisting the cold, yet they pressed on. The ability to remain calm and coordinated under such conditions was crucial, for in battle, soldiers often faced unexpected obstacles, rivers, marshes, and other natural barriers. Even sleep became part of endurance training. Legionaries were trained to rest lightly, to wake at any moment, to sleep with one eye open if necessary. Comfort was a luxury never afforded, and adaptability became second nature. A soldier could wake in the middle of the night, don armor, grab weapons, and march without hesitation. Fatigue was constant, but through discipline, it became manageable. Games and competitions reinforced endurance. Soldiers raced with packs, wrestled with comrades, carried logs in contests of strength and persistence. These activities were more than sport. They tested stamina, sharpened focus, and strengthened camaraderie. Pain, discomfort, and exhaustion were normalized, teaching men to push beyond what might have seemed possible. Consider, too, the psychological aspect. Roman commanders understood that morale and mental resilience were essential components of endurance. Soldiers were trained to remain calm under pressure, to suppress panic, to focus on their role, even when surrounded by chaos. Endurance was as much about controlling fear and frustration as it was about carrying weight or marching miles. Repetition was the secret of Roman endurance. Every drill, every march, every camp construction, every mock battle repeated again and again until movements became instinctive, endurance automatic, and the body a machine built for survival. Soldiers were no longer ordinary men. They were legionaries. They could march further, fight longer, and endure harsher conditions than any other army of their time. And as we picture this, dear friend, we see a legion on the move. Dust rises from their feet. Their armor glints in the sunlight, shields locked together, spears poised. Their breath is steady, their pace unwavering. For hours they march, then they build, then they train, then they rest lightly, and then they rise again. Endurance has become a rhythm, a flowing motion of body and mind in harmony. This endurance was not only a physical achievement, but a cultural identity. A Roman soldier's life was defined by the ability to carry on despite pain, exhaustion, and adversity. Each man knew that failure meant shame, defeat, or worse, yet each man also knew that by enduring, He contributed to the unshakable power of Rome. Endurance became a virtue, a badge of honor, and a pathway to survival and glory. Imagine now, as you let this thought settle, the sound of hundreds of Roman soldiers moving in unison, their steps echoing across fields, their shields forming an unbroken wall, their bodies trained to act as one. It is mesmerizing, hypnotic, almost like the rhythm of the earth itself. This was the essence of Roman endurance: constant motion, repeated action, mastery over fatigue, mastery over fear, mastery over self. And so, dear friend, we see that endurance in the Roman army was not just a skill, it was a way of life. Every march, every drill, every laborious task was a lesson in persistence, a test of will, a building block for an empire. Where Spartans built endurance from childhood, Romans built it in adulthood. But the results were just as formidable. Men who could carry Rome across continents, conquer lands, and hold lines that would seem impossible to ordinary humans. And now, as you drift deeper into this vision, let the rhythm of their steps, the steadiness of their breath, and the unity of their motion settle over your mind. Feel the calm certainty of endurance, the quiet strength of repetition, the soft power of a body and mind trained to last longer than most could imagine. This is the legacy of Roman endurance. Having explored the endurance that carried the legions across continents and the discipline that shaped their daily lives, we now turn to the heart of Roman military power, their mastery of weapons and combat drills. For all the strength, all the endurance, all the marching, what truly defined a legionnaire was his skill in battle. Every movement, every thrust, every defensive block was drilled until it became instinct, flowing through the body like water, unthinking yet precise. Imagine a Roman training ground at dawn. Mist rises from the grass, dew cool against tired limbs, and hundreds of soldiers line up in perfect formation. Wooden posts and dummies stand like silent opponents. Each man grips his training sword, a weighted wooden gladius, heavier than the blade he will one day wield in battle. He lifts his shield, polished and reinforced, feeling its solid weight pressing against his forearm. Around him, instructors walk, sharp-eyed, watching for mistakes. Combat training in the Roman army was relentless and methodical. Soldiers were not simply taught to swing a sword, they were taught the gladius in its entirety: how to thrust with precision, how to step, how to turn, how to block, how to move as part of a unit. The philosophy was efficiency. A slash might look dramatic, but a thrust killed. Therefore, drills emphasized short, powerful, precise strikes, delivered without hesitation. Pairs of soldiers faced each other in repeated bouts. At first, movements were slow, deliberate. Each parry, each thrust, each step was corrected. Instructors corrected posture, stance, the angle of the shield, the placement of the feet. As skill improved, the pace increased. What began as deliberate practice became fluid, rapid, instinctual. The body learned to act before the mind could fully process, a harmony of reflex and training that would be vital in battle. But Romans did not train in isolation. Combat drills emphasized coordination and teamwork. Soldiers practiced in groups, moving together, shields locked in formation, advancing or retreating as one. The legionary learned to fight as a unit, not as an individual. Every movement was synchronized. Every thrust complemented the thrust of his neighbor. Every shield interlocked with another to form a wall of defense. This was the essence of Roman combat, the individual's skill, enhanced by the cohesion of the unit. Beyond the gladius, the pilum, the heavy-throwing javelin, was mastered through endless repetition. Soldiers practiced throwing the pilum so that it landed in perfect formation, bending on impact to pierce shields and disrupt enemy lines. They learned to throw it while moving, while under pressure, while fatigued from marches or drills. Precision under stress became instinct. The pilum was not just a weapon, but an extension of the soldier's body and mind. Training also included mock battles, sometimes involving hundreds of men at once. These exercises simulated the chaos of real combat, advancing and retreating, thrusting and parrying, maintaining formation while responding to sudden threats. Soldiers practiced climbing, ducking, and maneuvering with full armor. They learned to react not in isolation, but in harmony with the movements of those around them. In this way, skill was combined with endurance, with discipline, with situational awareness, a symphony of preparation. Even drills that might seem mundane today were infused with deadly purpose. Soldiers practiced stabbing through wooden dummies, stepping over obstacles, striking from awkward positions. They learned to fight in close quarters, where every movement mattered. They practiced recovering from stumbles, regaining balance while maintaining readiness. Their bodies were trained to function under pressure, their reflexes honed, their instincts sharpened. One of the most intense aspects of Roman weapons mastery was continuous repetition. A soldier might practice the same thrust hundreds of times in a single day. He might carry a weighted sword for hours, simulating the fatigue of battle before striking again. This repetition was not cruel. It was deliberate. It forged muscle memory, ingrained instinct, and prepared the soldier for the unpredictability of war. Combat drills were also mental training. Soldiers learned to anticipate enemy movements, to maintain focus amid chaos, to make split-second decisions while exhausted. The mind was trained to remain calm, to analyze, to act decisively. A legionnaire's effectiveness depended on the integration of body and mind, the strength of his arms, the endurance of his legs, and the clarity of his thought. Even after mastery of weapons, soldiers continued to refine their skills through sparring, sometimes in tournaments that mimicked battle conditions. Bruises and minor injuries were common. Pain was normalized. The aim was not to defeat a partner, but to train as if the chaos of war were constant, to test skill under realistic conditions, and to reinforce mental and physical resilience. Imagine now, dear friend, the scene in its fullness. Hundreds of Roman soldiers, sweat on their brows, arms aching from repetition, feet sore from long marches, yet their movements are fluid, precise, synchronized. Shields lock perfectly, swords thrust in perfect arcs, javelins fly in unison, bending shields and disrupting imaginary foes. The instructors move among them, correcting, guiding, observing, ensuring that every soldier becomes not just strong, not just fast, but deadly precise. Training did not stop with weapons. Soldiers learned to use their environment, walls, slopes, trenches, to their advantage. They practiced formations for different terrains, narrow passes, open fields, riverbanks. They adapted their movements to obstacles, honing flexibility, awareness, and strategy. Every drill was layered with practicality. Every motion had a reason. Every repetition forged mastery. By the time a Roman recruit completed his training, he had transformed. From a simple farmer or laborer, he became a weapon in human form. Every movement refined, every reflex honed, every strike practiced until instinctual. He could march for miles, construct a fortified camp, withstand exhaustion, and still fight with deadly precision. He was not only a soldier, he was a master of his body, a technician of battle, a living instrument of Rome's enduring power. And so, dear friend, as you imagine this, allow the rhythm of practice to seep into your mind. Hear the sweep of wooden swords, the clatter of shields, the synchronized footfalls. Feel the patience, the repetition, the calm determination that makes skill seem effortless. Let it wash over you, a gentle tide of precision and strength, as if you yourself are standing among them, moving in rhythm, practicing not with the body alone, but with the mind fully engaged, calm, focused, and at ease. Roman weapons mastery was not a single lesson, but a lifetime of discipline, repetition, endurance, and mental focus. It was the fusion of strength, technique, and unity, a perfect balance that created soldiers capable of extraordinary feats. And in this quiet, steady rhythm of training, there is something hypnotic, something soothing, a reminder that mastery is built not in a moment, but in the slow, deliberate repetition of every action, every day, over a lifetime. As we leave the rhythmic clatter of weapons and the synchronized footfalls of Roman soldiers behind, we step into another, quieter, but equally demanding aspect of their preparation, camp life and survival training. For the life of a legionnaire did not begin or end with battle. In truth, the majority of a soldier's experience was spent not in combat, but in the daily routines, challenges, and discipline of the camp. Here, in these moments of stillness and repetition, Rome's soldiers learned endurance, adaptability, and resourcefulness, skills that were as essential as swordsmanship or marching. Picture the Roman camp at dawn. The first light touches rows of tents neatly arranged in precise squares. Soldiers stir from their simple beds of reeds, rubbing sleep from tired eyes, the chill of the early morning air pressing against their bare skin. There is no luxury here, only order, discipline, and the quiet hum of preparation. Each man knows his role, his duties, and the importance of maintaining structure. Camp life itself is training. Every task, no matter how mundane, is a rehearsal for survival. Construction of the camp was often the first task upon arrival at a new location. Soldiers dug trenches and erected palisades, positioning stakes to form fortified walls. These defenses were designed to protect the legion while they slept, ate, and rested. Imagine digging trenches under the hot sun, your hands blistered from repetitive motion, your shoulders and back aching. Yet the work must be precise. A misaligned stake, a poorly dug trench, could make the difference between safety and disaster. Every movement was deliberate, every effort a lesson in endurance, strength, and attention to detail. Beyond construction, soldiers were responsible for gathering and preparing food. Meals were often simple: hard bread, salted meat, and a thin gruel. Hunting and foraging were necessary skills, particularly when on campaign in unfamiliar territory. Legionaries learned to identify edible plants, to catch small game, to fish in rivers. These exercises honed patience, resourcefulness, and survival instincts. Hunger was a constant companion, and learning to endure it without complaint was considered essential training for battle. Water, too, was carefully rationed and managed. Soldiers learned to locate clean sources, to purify water when necessary, and to conserve it under harsh conditions. Even the act of carrying water became a test of endurance and discipline. Imagine walking miles with heavy containers, balancing them carefully, all while maintaining readiness for sudden orders or threats. Every action in camp life reinforced the skills necessary to survive not only in battle, but in the harsh reality of life on campaign. Sanitation was another critical aspect of camp life. Roman soldiers understood the importance of cleanliness, not out of vanity, but as a matter of health and efficiency. Latrines were dug at a distance from living quarters, waste managed carefully to prevent disease. Soldiers learned to maintain personal hygiene with limited water, to care for wounds, and to avoid infection. These lessons were subtle but essential. A legion weakened by illness or poor hygiene could not stand against an enemy, no matter how skilled or brave. Rest, too, was carefully regulated. Sleep was neither indulgent nor excessive. Soldiers rested lightly, often taking shifts to ensure constant vigilance. The ability to wake quickly, to respond to threats in the dark, to function effectively on limited rest was cultivated through routine and practice. This resilience became second nature, a silent testament to the training embedded in every waking and sleeping hour. The Romans also trained for emergencies and surprise attacks. Night drills simulated sudden enemy assaults. Soldiers were expected to assemble quickly, don armor, grab weapons, and form defensive lines with precision. Even in half-light, in the midst of fatigue, every man knew his position and duties. These exercises instilled reflexive readiness, the ability to respond with calm and coordinated action even when the unexpected arrived. Beyond the practical, camp life fostered camaraderie and psychological resilience. Soldiers shared tasks, meals, and hardships. Bonds formed through shared labor and shared suffering were as important as skill with weapons. A legionnaire knew that his life depended on the man beside him as much as on his own strength. Trust, loyalty, and mutual support were cultivated through the daily rhythms of camp life, reinforcing the cohesion that made Roman formations so formidable. Training also included environmental adaptability. Legionaries learned to set up camps in diverse terrains: hills, plains, forests, riverbanks, deserts. They learned to use the natural landscape to their advantage, to camouflage tents, to dig defenses that blended with the terrain, to make every encampment secure. Survival was a constant challenge, and soldiers were trained to meet it creatively and effectively. Hygiene, endurance, construction, vigilance, adaptability, teamwork, all of these were drilled relentlessly, not as punishment, but as preparation for the unexpected. The Roman soldier's life in camp was a microcosm of campaign life. Every moment a potential challenge, every task a rehearsal for survival and combat. Even the smallest mistakes could have consequences, and so precision and awareness became ingrained habits. Imagine, dear friend, a legionary as dusk settles over the camp, fires burn low, casting flickering shadows on the rows of tents. Soldiers sharpen weapons, mend armor, check supplies. Some whisper quietly to their neighbors. Some sit alone in silent reflection. Despite exhaustion, there is order, purpose, readiness. Sleep is coming soon, but it will be brief, disciplined, shared. The day's training has ended, but the lessons linger in every muscle, every thought, every heartbeat. Roman camp life and survival training shaped not just bodies, but minds. Soldiers became capable of enduring discomfort, managing stress, acting decisively under pressure, and maintaining calm in chaos. They learned to integrate endurance, skill, and discipline into every action, preparing them to function effectively anywhere, on the battlefield or on the march. And so, as you let this vision unfold, imagine yourself moving quietly among the tents. Feel the cool night air, smell the smoke of campfires, hear the soft murmur of comrades, sense the discipline in every motion, the readiness in every stance, the calm certainty that comes from a body and mind honed to endure and adapt. This is the essence of Roman camp life. Not luxurious, not easy, but a constant, quiet training for survival. A rhythm that prepares men for any challenge, any battlefield, any obstacle. Through this daily life, Roman soldiers became more than fighters. They became self-reliant, resourceful, disciplined, resilient. They learned to endure hunger, fatigue, uncertainty, and discomfort with calm determination. They became part of a system greater than themselves, a living, moving machine of survival and conquest. And within this rhythm lies a beauty of quiet mastery, a meditation in action, a hypnotic flow that is almost calming, almost dreamlike, a legacy of order, preparation, and unyielding endurance. As the Roman legionnaire mastered weapons, endurance, and survival, there came another layer to his education, one that was less visible on the surface, but equally critical: siege training and battlefield strategy. For Rome did not simply conquer through brute force. It conquered through intelligence, planning, and the ability to adapt to complex situations. Understanding the mechanics of war, learning to employ men and machines in harmony, and anticipating enemy movements became as important as strength or skill with the gladius. Imagine a Roman training ground transformed into a mock battlefield. Soldiers move carefully among wooden towers, trenches, and siege engines. Engineers instruct the men in the operation of catapults, ballistae, and battering rams. Each weapon requires skill, coordination, and understanding. The legionaries are not merely soldiers, they are operators, tacticians, and problem solvers. Their minds are as engaged as their bodies. Siege training began with endurance under pressure. Legionaries learned to approach fortified positions while carrying full packs and weapons, maintaining discipline even under simulated attack. They practiced digging trenches and constructing protective ramparts to shield themselves from missiles. The soil was hard, the tools heavy, the sun relentless, yet repetition and patience made them capable of sustained labor even in the midst of danger. Catapults and ballistae required meticulous practice. Soldiers learned to assemble, load, aim, and fire these machines repeatedly. Precision was key. A misaligned bolt or stone could miss the target, wasting resources or endangering their own men. Teams operated together as one unit, every member knowing his task perfectly. This collective skill built trust, confidence, and cohesion, reinforcing the notion that Rome's strength lay not in individuals, but in the synergy of the legion. Battering rams were another focus. Soldiers learned to maneuver massive wooden beams, reinforced with iron, to break down gates or walls. The process demanded rhythm, timing, and sheer coordination. Each man swung, braced, and struck in perfect harmony with his comrades. Fatigue set in quickly, yet the soldiers continued until the exercise was complete. The repetition trained not only strength, but mental endurance, to persist despite exhaustion and to trust the rhythm of the team. Beyond machinery, Roman soldiers drilled in tactics for scaling walls. Ladders, ropes, and siege towers were employed to practice rapid, disciplined ascent under fire. Soldiers learned to maintain formation, keep their weapons ready, and coordinate movements to prevent chaos. Every step on a shaky ladder, every placement of a foot on uneven stone became an exercise in focus, balance, and composure under pressure. Strategy lessons were integrated into these drills. Commanders taught recruits to read terrain, anticipate enemy actions, and coordinate movements across the battlefield. Soldiers practiced advancing and retreating in formation, responding to signals, and adjusting positions based on the shifting situation. These exercises cultivated situational awareness, decision making, and adaptability, mental tools that would prove vital when facing unpredictable opponents. Mock battles often simulated sieges in miniature. Soldiers faced opposing units, defending walls, or attempting to breach defenses while under simulated attack. Catapults hurled stones and darts. Defenders fired arrows and javelins. The noise, the chaos, the urgency of the drills mirrored the intensity of real combat. Legionaries learned to maintain calm, coordinate with their unit, and execute strategy even when fear and fatigue pressed against them. Engineering knowledge was also part of siege training. Soldiers learned to construct temporary bridges, build siege towers, and erect wooden scaffolding. They understood the principles of leverage, weight distribution, and structural integrity. In this way, the soldier was also a craftsman and engineer, capable of building the means to overcome obstacles as well as using them in defense. Psychological training played a role as well. Siege operations could be prolonged, testing patience and morale. Soldiers were conditioned to maintain focus and discipline for hours, sometimes days, without immediate engagement. This endurance of mind, the ability to persist when results were not immediate, reinforced resilience and the understanding that victory was often a product of preparation and persistence rather than sudden action. Communication was another key element. Soldiers learned to interpret and relay signals across the battlefield, to understand commands shouted from officers, and to anticipate orders based on prior training. Precision in communication ensured that units moved as one, maintaining cohesion even when separated by obstacles or under pressure. Night operations were included in training, as attacks and sieges did not always wait for daylight. Soldiers practiced navigating terrain, assembling equipment, and maintaining formation in the low visibility. They honed their senses, learned to trust instincts, and reinforced teamwork under conditions that demanded trust, focus, and adaptability. Imagine, dear friend, a legion standing before a massive, fortified wall. Catapults thrum, stones clatter, the air is filled with tension, and anticipation, soldiers advance in formation, shields locked, weapons poised. Some operate the siege machines, others prepare ladders and ramps, and every motion is synchronized, rehearsed, perfected. The scene is a blend of chaos and order, energy and discipline, action and thought, a living demonstration of the fusion of endurance, skill, and strategy. Siege training also reinforced the psychological advantage of Rome. Soldiers were taught to remain unflinching in the face of daunting defenses. Walls, moats, and towers might intimidate the unprepared, but the Roman legionary was trained to see obstacles not as threats, but as challenges to overcome. Confidence, discipline, and preparation became armor for the mind as well as the body. Repetition and immersion were key to mastery. Every action in siege training, from operating a ballista to scaling a wall to digging a trench, was practiced endlessly. Muscle memory, teamwork, and instinct were reinforced through repetition. Soldiers became capable of executing complex maneuvers under pressure with calm efficiency. Through these lessons, Roman soldiers learned that warfare was not only about brute force, it was about observation, planning, adaptation, and coordination. Victory depended on the integration of strength, skill, endurance, discipline, and intelligence. The legion was more than an army. It was a sophisticated system in which every soldier played a vital role. Every movement was calculated, and every action contributed to the whole. And so, dear friend, as you picture this, let the rhythm of the drills, the thrum of siege engines, the precise movements of men in formation wash over your mind. Feel the coordination, the discipline, the steady pulse of strategy unfolding in motion. Let it be calm and hypnotic, the measured dance of preparation and readiness, the slow unfolding of mastery over both body and mind. Roman siege training and battlefield strategy created soldiers capable of facing any obstacle, enduring any hardship, and executing complex operations with precision. It was the synthesis of physical conditioning, mental discipline, and tactical knowledge, all woven into a seamless whole. And in this, there is a beauty to be felt, the quiet mastery of chaos, the hypnotic rhythm of preparation, the calm certainty that comes from knowing you are trained to meet any challenge. Having walked through the rigorous lives of both Spartan and Roman soldiers, from early childhood to adulthood, from weapons mastery to endurance, and from daily camp life to siege operations, we can now take a quiet step back and observe the differences, the similarities, and the fascinating interplay between these two legendary approaches to war. This reflection allows us to see not only how soldiers were trained, but how culture, philosophy, and societal structure shaped their bodies, minds, and destinies. Imagine first the Spartan landscape, rugged hills, harsh sun, and dry earth. Boys as young as 7 leave their homes to enter the Agoge, a system designed to strip away weakness and instill resilience. Their training begins with pain and endurance, running barefoot over rough terrain, fasting, wrestling, and receiving lessons in silence and stoic discipline. From childhood, they are conditioned to endure, to withstand, to obey, and to serve the state above themselves. Spartan soldiers are shaped by hardship, by exposure to suffering, and by the constant presence of danger. not theoretical, but expected. Every day is a rehearsal for the battlefield, where courage and endurance are tested to the limit. Now, shift your gaze to Rome. The landscape is different. Fertile plains, bustling towns, the distant hum of civilization. Roman recruits are often young men, but not children. They arrive as farmers, shepherds, or laborers, unrefined yet physically capable. Rome's approach emphasizes system, repetition, and gradual progression. Training is methodical. Long marches with heavy packs, endurance drills, weapons mastery, mock battles, construction, and tactical exercises. Discipline is reinforced not by the extremity of suffering alone, but by structure, hierarchy, and the constant repetition of tasks until they become instinctual. The first key difference is timing. Spartans begin their training in early childhood, molding both body and mind from the earliest formative years. Romans generally begin in adulthood, relying on existing physical maturity, and then refine, condition, and integrate those abilities into a disciplined soldier. Spartan training is immersive, cultural, and total. It defines identity. Roman training is rigorous, professional, and precise. It defines function. Spartans are raised to embody the soldier. Romans are trained to execute war with precision, efficiency, and adaptability. Another distinction is the philosophy of hardship. Spartans embrace suffering as a virtue. Hunger, cold, pain, and exhaustion are normalized and intentionally imposed. The Agoge teaches boys to accept discomfort without complaint, to transform suffering into strength. Romans, while also enduring fatigue, long marches, and harsh conditions, place more emphasis on structure, planning, and system. Hardship is a tool, but efficiency and organization mitigate unnecessary suffering. Where Spartans cultivate toughness through extremity, Romans cultivate effectiveness through order. Endurance is shaped differently as well. Spartan endurance is holistic, mental, physical, and emotional fused into one. From childhood, the mind is conditioned to silence, the body to relentless effort, and the spirit to loyalty to the state and comrades. Roman endurance is systematic, measured marches, long drills, extended labor, and repeated exposure to stress build stamina in a predictable, quantifiable way. Spartans endure to survive and embody courage. Romans endure to perform and to execute strategy. Weapons training provides another point of contrast. Spartans are masters of the spear and shield in the phalanx, learning to fight as one cohesive unit from youth. The dory and hoplite shield are drilled in unison, and combat skills are practiced relentlessly in tandem with endurance. Romans, however, employ a broader arsenal: gladius, pilum, siege engines, and diverse formations. Their training integrates individual skill with unit coordination, emphasizing flexibility and adaptability in a variety of scenarios. Spartans specialize in perfection within a narrow system. Romans master versatility within a structured system. Mental conditioning also differs. Spartans cultivate stoicism, fearlessness, and acceptance of death. From childhood, they are taught that dying for Sparta is the ultimate honor. Romans cultivate resilience, focus, and discipline with an emphasis on tactical intelligence and problem solving. Fear is managed, stress is anticipated, and decision-making is refined under controlled training. Spartan mental conditioning is existential, about identity and courage. Roman mental conditioning is strategic, about clarity, effectiveness, and adaptability. Daily routines illustrate further contrast. Spartan life revolves around the constant presence of military purpose. Wrestling, running, fasting, drills, and enduring pain are daily constants. Romans live a structured routine that combines physical drills, weapons practice, camp construction, and tactical exercises. Spartans are molded by hardship into soldiers who survive by instinct and courage. Romans are trained as professionals who function optimally within the machinery of the legion. Camp life demonstrates the differing priorities as well. Spartans rarely experienced the structured logistics of Roman camps. Survival, resourcefulness, and adaptation to harsh conditions were constant tests. Romans, in contrast, learned to construct organized, fortified camps, manage supplies, ration food and water, and maintain hygiene. The camp is a microcosm of order. The soldier learns to endure, but also to integrate discipline, organization, and teamwork into every aspect of life. Spartans survive. Romans operate. Training philosophy also reveals cultural values. Sparta values loyalty to the state and the community above all. The individual is secondary. Rome values cohesion, hierarchy, and functionality. The individual is essential as part of a larger system. Spartans cultivate identity and courage. Romans cultivate capability and execution. Both approaches produce exceptional soldiers, yet their underlying purpose reflects the society that shapes them. Yet, there are remarkable similarities. Both Sparta and Rome understand that endurance, discipline, and skill are inseparable. Both recognize the importance of mental toughness, physical conditioning, and teamwork. Both employ repetition and ritual, whether in early childhood or in daily drills. Both integrate survival skills, adaptability, and preparation for chaos into their training. Both create soldiers who, in their respective contexts, can endure, fight, and triumph where ordinary men would fail. The synchronization of movement is another shared feature. Spartans in phalanx formation move as one, each man trusting his neighbor. Romans in legion formations advance, retreat, and strike as a cohesive unit. In both systems, the individual's effectiveness is magnified by coordination, discipline, and mutual reliance. Unity is strength, whether in the rugged valleys of Sparta or across the structured campaigns of Rome. Philosophical differences aside, we can also compare physical focus. Spartans emphasize body weight exercises, running, wrestling, and spear drills that develop lean, powerful, and enduring physiques. Romans emphasize weighted marching, repetitive weapon drills, construction labor, and siege operations that develop functional strength, stamina, and versatility. Spartans perfect the soldier's form for battle. Romans optimize the soldier's capacity for sustained strategic operations. Endurance and fatigue management are another point of comparison. Spartans endure extreme conditions to cultivate toughness and resilience. Romans endure through systematic exposure, repetition, and careful training, integrating stress into structured preparation. Spartans teach the body and mind to survive the impossible. Romans teach the body and mind to function optimally under predictable stress and chaos. Ultimately, both systems produce extraordinary results, yet they differ in style and philosophy. Spartan training shapes a soldier into a living symbol of courage, resilience, and state loyalty. Roman training shapes a soldier into a professional instrument of strategy, endurance, and coordinated action. Spartans are warriors from birth. Romans are warriors by design. As you let these comparisons settle in your mind, dear friend, picture both soldiers standing silently on training grounds. The Spartan, lean, scarred, focused, eyes steady, body conditioned through years of hardship. The Roman, disciplined, precise, adaptable, prepared to operate seamlessly within the machinery of the Legion. Both are unyielding, both endure, both embody the values of their respective cultures. And yet, the rhythm of their training, the focus of their minds, the resilience of their bodies, all carry a hypnotic quality, almost soothing, as you imagine them moving through their world. By understanding these comparative insights, we see more than just historical differences. We see philosophy expressed in flesh and motion. We see how culture, necessity, and societal values sculpt bodies and minds, teaching endurance, discipline, skill, and resilience. And in this observation, there is both fascination and calm, a gentle immersion into the slow, deliberate shaping of extraordinary humans. As we continue our journey through the lives of ancient soldiers, we now turn to a broader perspective, one that examines not only Sparta and Rome, but other cultures that sought to forge extraordinary warriors. For the story of ancient military training is not limited to a single land or philosophy. It is a tapestry woven across continents, from the disciplined phalanxes of Greece to the armored legions of Rome, the fierce warriors of Carthage, and beyond. By understanding the tools, armor, and physical conditioning that shaped these soldiers, we glimpse the universality of human dedication to mastery, endurance, and survival. Imagine the Spartan warrior once again. From early childhood, his body is trained to wield the dory, the long spear, and the hoplon, the heavy shield, with precision. These were not merely weapons, but extensions of the body itself. The dory demanded strength, coordination, and endurance. It was long, heavy, and unwieldy to the untrained. Yet, through years of repetition, Spartans learned to thrust in perfect rhythm with their comrades, their bodies moving as part of a single, coordinated phalanx. Every strike, parry, and step was practiced until instinctual. The shield, or aspis, was equally demanding. Weighing over 30 pounds, it was carried on the left arm, requiring tremendous shoulder and core strength. Spartans spent countless hours marching, running, and training while holding the shield, developing stamina and stability. The result was not just a stronger arm, but a warrior capable of maintaining defensive formation while exerting offensive force, a balance of endurance and precision honed over years of disciplined practice. Physical conditioning in Sparta went beyond weapons. Wrestling, running, climbing, and gymnastics were daily rituals. Boys and men learned to leap, twist, grapple, and sprint, developing agility, flexibility, and coordination. Their bodies became a living instrument, capable of movement and reaction under extreme pressure. Strength was functional, endurance holistic, and skill fused with instinct. Now, turn your attention to Rome. The Roman legionary wielded the gladius, a short stabbing sword, and the pilum, a heavy throwing javelin. Unlike the Spartan emphasis on a single weapon system, Romans trained across multiple implements, developing versatility and adaptability. The gladius required close quarter precision, while the pilum demanded explosive power, timing, and accuracy. Training with weighted swords and shields enhanced strength and endurance, making the real weapons feel lighter and more agile. Armor also played a central role. Roman soldiers wore segmented lorica segmentata, chainmail, or scale armor, along with helmets and greaves. These were heavy, often cumbersome, and initially uncomfortable. Training included movement in full armor, marching, running, lifting, and fighting. The soldiers' bodies adapted, developing the strength and stamina to operate effectively under weight and restriction. Armor was not just protection, it was a constant companion that shaped endurance and technique. Beyond Sparta and Rome, other cultures devised their own systems of weapons mastery and physical conditioning. Consider the Carthaginian soldiers under Hannibal, who needed to traverse mountains and deserts while carrying heavy packs and engaging in pitched battles. They trained for endurance under extreme conditions, learning to adapt to terrain, climate, and scarcity. Their weapons, often shorter spears and swords, were complemented by javelins and slings, tools requiring accuracy, speed, and timing. In Egypt, soldiers of the pharaohs practiced archery with remarkable skill. The bow demanded precision, upper body strength, and steadiness under pressure. Repetition was key. Thousands of arrows loosed in practice, muscles conditioned to draw the bow with consistency. These soldiers complemented their ranged prowess with shields and short swords, and physical training focused on balance, agility, and the ability to maneuver in formation on uneven terrain, often under scorching sun. Across Asia, warriors, such as the early Chinese infantry, trained in both individual combat and unit coordination. Pole arms, spears, and swords were central, and drills emphasized precision, discipline, and endurance. Armor was layered and heavy, requiring adaptation, strength, and agility. Soldiers practiced formations that could be executed with speed, integrating movement, weapons use, and group cohesion. Training also included rigorous calisthenics and running, building stamina for campaigns across mountains, rivers, and vast distances. Greek city-states beyond Sparta also developed distinctive systems. Hoplites trained in formation drills, weapons mastery, and rigorous physical conditioning. Running, wrestling, and spear drills were routine, ensuring that each soldier could function effectively in the tightly packed phalanx. Their shields and armor created a unique dynamic. Soldiers learned to move as part of a dense wall of men, balancing defensive positioning with offensive thrusts. Returning to Rome, physical conditioning extended beyond weaponry. Soldiers carried heavy packs for long distances, sometimes 30 kilometers or more per day, reinforcing muscular endurance, cardiovascular stamina, and mental resilience. They practiced swimming, river crossings, and obstacle navigation. Siege operations demanded lifting, pushing, and coordinated labor, all of which conditioned the body to apply strength and endurance simultaneously. The Roman system trained a soldier to be strong, agile, and adaptable, able to operate in any situation. In all these cultures, repetition was essential. Weapons, drills, marches, and labor were repeated until movement became instinctual. Muscle memory, reflexes, and decision-making under stress were cultivated over years. The body learned not only strength and agility, but also endurance, precision, and adaptability. The mind learned focus, discipline, and calmness under pressure. Across cultures, the goal was the same: a human body capable of extraordinary function, integrated with skill, strategy, and mental resilience. Armor and weapons also dictated specific conditioning. Heavier shields built arm and core strength. Long spears demanded posture, leverage, and rotational power. Swords required coordination, timing, and wrist strength. Even bow training built back, shoulder, and forearm muscles. Across cultures, every physical feature was developed in harmony with the weapon systems, creating bodies sculpted for their tools of war. Diet and recovery complemented conditioning. Soldiers across civilizations consumed rations designed for sustained energy: grains, legumes, meat, and occasionally wine. Hydration and simple restorative practices maintained endurance during long campaigns. Sleep, although limited, was strategically managed, often light and alert. Recovery was embedded into the rhythm of training, ensuring that the body could perform repeatedly without long-term degradation. Consider, too, the mental aspect. Training in weapons and armor was inseparable from mental preparation. Soldiers learned to remain calm under weight and restriction, to anticipate enemy movements, to maintain formation while fatigue set in, and to react instinctively. The combination of physical conditioning, weapons mastery, and psychological resilience was universal, even if the methods and philosophies differed. By comparing cultures, we see a fascinating spectrum. Spartans emphasized endurance through extremity and lifelong immersion, shaping identity and resilience. Romans emphasized systematic, versatile, and professional training, shaping capability and execution. Carthaginians trained for harsh terrain and logistical adaptation. Egyptians mastered precision, stability, and agility for ranged combat. Chinese soldiers developed discipline, coordination, and adaptability for diverse campaigns. Greeks emphasized cohesion, phalanx integrity, and repetitive mastery. Across continents and centuries, the goal remained the same: soldiers whose bodies, minds, and skill were harmonized to survive and dominate on the battlefield. As you imagine this panorama of warriors, dear friend, picture the variety of weapons, armor, and training techniques, each suited to its environment, culture, and philosophy. See Spartans running barefoot across rugged hills, hoplites in tight phalanx formations, Roman legions moving with precision under weighted packs, Egyptian archers drawing bows with calm focus, and Chinese infantry executing coordinated maneuvers with disciplined grace. Notice the rhythm of repetition, the discipline in movement, the subtle blending of strength, skill, and mental control. Let the hypnotic cadence of their actions wash over your mind. The clatter of swords, the thud of shields, the hiss of arrows, the synchronized footfalls of marching soldiers, all combine into a calming rhythm. Across cultures, despite differences, there is harmony in purpose, precision in action, and serenity in mastery. The human body, trained to its limits, performs with grace, efficiency, and resilience. And so, dear friend, as you imagine these ancient warriors across time and space, allow the vision to flow gently. Feel the subtle power of endurance, the quiet mastery of skill, the steady rhythm of disciplined bodies. Across Sparta, Rome, Carthage, Egypt, Greece, and China, the lesson is clear. Through careful training, repetition, and integration of mind and body, humans achieved extraordinary physical and mental capabilities. And within this vision lies calm, fascination, and perhaps even a gentle sense of drowsiness as your mind drifts among these disciplined and masterful forms. As we continue our exploration of ancient soldier training, we now shift our focus from individual skill, endurance, and weapons mastery to the broader orchestration of armies on the battlefield. No matter how strong, skilled, or disciplined a soldier may be, the outcomes of war often hinged on coordination, strategy, and the seamless functioning of formations. Tactical formations, the art of arranging soldiers in space and time, were as vital as strength or skill. They turned disciplined men into instruments of collective power, whether in the hills of Sparta, the plains of Rome, or the deserts of Egypt. Imagine a battlefield at dawn. Mist rises over the land. The first light glints off spears, shields, and armor. Soldiers move into position, their individual bodies transformed into components of a larger system. Each unit has a role, each soldier a precise place. The air hums with anticipation. Every step, every movement has been drilled countless times. This is the magic of formations. Individual effort multiplied by unity, discipline, and timing. The Spartans perfected the phalanx, perhaps the most iconic formation of the ancient world. Imagine rows of soldiers, shields locked, spears projecting forward like a bristling wall of metal. Each man's left arm supports the shield of the soldier to his left, creating a continuous protective barrier. Every step, every advance, every thrust is coordinated with the man beside him. Training from childhood instilled reflexive adherence to the phalanx. Spartans moved as one organism, each soldier trusting his neighbor entirely. The cohesion and discipline of the phalanx turned dozens, then hundreds of men into an almost impenetrable force. Roman formations were different, yet equally formidable. The legion emphasized flexibility. Soldiers were arranged in maniples or cohorts, units capable of independent maneuver while maintaining overall cohesion. The famous testudo, or tortoise formation, was a marvel of coordination. Shields overhead and on the sides, forming a protective shell against projectiles. Each soldier knew exactly how to position himself, how to align with others, and how to move as a single protective entity. Roman tactical formations allowed adaptation, responding to changing battlefield conditions while maintaining discipline and cohesion. Beyond Sparta and Rome, many cultures developed formations suited to their weapons, terrain, and tactical philosophy. Egyptian infantry, often armed with spears, shields, and bows, trained to advance in tight columns, protecting archers while maintaining offensive pressure. Carthaginian forces, particularly under Hannibal, integrated war elephants with infantry requiring intricate coordination to prevent disruption. Chinese armies trained in long, linear formations for spears and polearms, integrating cavalry units for flanking maneuvers. Across cultures, the principle remained the same. Individual soldiers achieved maximum effectiveness when operating within a coordinated, disciplined system. The importance of communication cannot be overstated. Ancient armies used signals, flags, drums, horns, or shouted commands to coordinate movement across distances. Soldiers were drilled to recognize and respond instantly to these cues. The success of a formation depended on the rapid, accurate transmission of orders and the disciplined execution by each unit. Mistakes could break the line, expose flanks, or lead to catastrophic losses. Training focused not only on physical movement, but also on attentiveness and anticipation. Timing was another critical component. Soldiers learned to advance, retreat, pivot, or charge in perfect unison. In the phalanx, a slight hesitation by one man could create a gap. In the Legion, delayed execution of a maneuver could expose the unit to enemy attacks. Repetition and drills made these movements instinctual, ensuring that coordination remained seamless even under the stress of combat. The mind and body became synchronized, reacting to both command and the subtle shifts of surrounding soldiers. Flexibility was a hallmark of Roman tactics. Unlike the rigid Spartan phalanx, Roman maniples could break apart, reform, and execute flanking or enveloping maneuvers. Soldiers practiced rapid realignment, forming squares, wedges, or columns depending on the tactical situation. These drills combined endurance, weapon mastery, and mental agility. A soldier had to remain aware of his own movement, the position of his comrades, and the orders of his commanders, all simultaneously. The result was an army capable of adapting fluidly to chaos while maintaining cohesion and effectiveness. Cavalry units were integrated into formations with equal care. In many ancient cultures, cavalry supported infantry by harassing flanks, pursuing retreating enemies, or engaging opposing horsemen. Coordination between infantry and cavalry required disciplined timing and precise communication. Drills emphasized synchronized maneuvers, mutual support, and awareness of terrain. Soldiers learned to adjust their pace, align their movement, and maintain formation integrity in conjunction with mounted units. Siege formations were another aspect of coordination. Soldiers operating siege engines, carrying ladders, or advancing under projectile fire had to move in concert, protecting each other and maintaining offensive momentum. Training involved simulating these conditions repeatedly, ensuring that each soldier could execute his task while remaining aligned with the broader strategy. The body, mind, and group became one, a flowing system of action under stress. Even psychological conditioning was embedded in formation training. Soldiers learned to maintain composure under pressure, trust their comrades, and act decisively when confronted with fear, confusion, or enemy action. The unity of the formation created a shared confidence. No man acted alone. The collective strength of discipline reassured the individual soldier, allowing him to perform with calm precision. Even amid chaos, terrain also shaped formations. Hills, rivers, forests, and plains dictated how soldiers deployed and moved. Training included exercises on uneven ground, steep inclines, and confined spaces, teaching soldiers to adapt formations without losing cohesion. Soldiers learned to anticipate obstacles, adjust spacing, and coordinate movements, all while maintaining defensive and offensive readiness. Adaptability and situational awareness became as important as strength or endurance. Comparative insights reveal fascinating contrasts. Spartan formations emphasized tight cohesion and immovable strength, relying on the courage and endurance of every individual. Roman formations emphasized adaptability, communication, and versatility, turning each soldier into a cog within a dynamic, coordinated machine. Egyptian, Carthaginian, and Chinese armies each adapted formations to their strategic philosophies, weapons, and environmental challenges. Across cultures, the principles of coordination, discipline, and repetition were universal. Imagine now, dear friend, a battlefield in motion. Spartans advance in perfect alignment, shields locked, spears poised, moving as a single organism. Roman soldiers shift and reform, units pivoting, columns advancing, testudo shells gliding forward under a hail of projectiles. Cavalry flanks, archers release volleys, and engineers maneuver siege equipment with quiet precision. Each soldier, weapon, and formation moves in harmony, creating a living tapestry of discipline, coordination, and power. Let the rhythm of these formations wash over your mind. The synchronized footfalls, the aligned spears, the measured movements, the disciplined responses to signals, all create a gentle, hypnotic cadence. The repetition, precision, and harmony of action have a calm, almost lulling quality, even as the imagination conjures the intensity of ancient battlefields. Tactical formations and unit coordination were more than strategies. They were a meditation in motion, strength, skill, endurance, mental focus, and teamwork fused into a single, flowing system. Across Sparta, Rome, and other ancient civilizations, soldiers became instruments of collective power, their bodies and minds tuned to function in harmony with one another. Through understanding these formations, dear friend, we see how coordination magnifies individual capability. One soldier alone is limited. A disciplined formation multiplies strength, endurance, and skill. The lessons extend beyond battle. Patience, attentiveness, synchronization, trust, and adaptability become as natural as breathing. And in imagining these armies in motion, the mind can drift gently, lulled by the hypnotic rhythm of disciplined human movement. As we journey deeper into the lives of ancient soldiers, it becomes clear that physical strength and skill alone were insufficient for survival and success. Equally important, perhaps even more subtle, yet deeply powerful, was the cultivation of the mind. Psychological conditioning and mental resilience were essential elements of military training, shaping soldiers who could endure fear, chaos, fatigue, and uncertainty with calm, decisive action. Understanding this aspect provides insight into why these soldiers were able to function as extraordinary instruments of war. Imagine the Spartan boy once again standing barefoot on the rough hills of Laconia. Pain, hunger, cold, and exhaustion are constants in his world. Yet the true focus of his training is not only the body, It is the mind. He learns stoicism, discipline, and the ability to act despite fear. The Agoge teaches him that discomfort is natural, death is honorable, and courage is a cultivated habit rather than a fleeting emotion. Every sprint, every wrestle, every hardship carries a lesson in self-mastery. Mental endurance is forged as systematically as physical endurance. Romans approached mental resilience in a structured, deliberate fashion. Soldiers were trained to anticipate stressors, the long marches, the weight of armor, the uncertainty of battle, the exhaustion of siege operations. Drills were designed not only to condition the body, but to create a psychological baseline where stress could be tolerated, analyzed, and acted upon without panic. Through repetition, soldiers learned to respond calmly and predictably, developing confidence in their training, equipment, and comrades. Fear management was a central aspect of psychological conditioning. Ancient battlefields were chaotic, noisy, and deadly. Soldiers were surrounded by screaming men, clashing metal, dust, and fire. To function effectively, a soldier's mind had to remain anchored. Spartans cultivated fearlessness through early exposure to danger, intentional deprivation, and constant reminders of duty. Romans cultivated composure through training, drills, and trust in formation and hierarchy. Both approaches resulted in soldiers capable of moving, fighting, and thinking under extreme stress. Resilience was reinforced through controlled challenges. Training simulations often placed soldiers in stressful conditions, limited visibility, exhaustion, exposure to elements, or simulated enemy attacks. These exercises were designed to evoke the sensations of real combat, allowing soldiers to experience and manage fear, uncertainty, and fatigue. Over time, these experiences became familiar, their emotional responses modulated by repetition. The mind learned to function calmly amid chaos, responding efficiently rather than reactively. Discipline, closely tied to mental resilience, was both a psychological and cultural construct. Soldiers internalized the understanding that survival depended on adherence to orders, coordination with comrades, and reliability in execution. Spartans were drilled from youth to obey without hesitation, to move as part of a unit, and to endure discomfort with pride. Romans were trained to execute precise maneuvers, trust in the chain of command, and maintain composure under complex and changing conditions. Discipline anchored the mind, providing certainty in otherwise unpredictable circumstances. Endurance of mental fatigue was also critical. Long marches, repetitive drills, prolonged exposure to hunger, and the monotony of camp life challenged focus and morale. Soldiers were trained to maintain attention, follow routines, and persevere despite discomfort. Techniques were subtle, structured schedules, ritualized behaviors, and repeated exposure to stress. Over time, these practices transformed both the body and mind, creating soldiers whose mental stamina matched their physical resilience. Another element of psychological conditioning was the cultivation of group cohesion and trust. Soldiers learned that their survival depended not solely on personal skill, but on the reliability of comrades. Shared hardship, synchronized drills, and collective problem solving reinforced bonds. The confidence that one could rely on neighbors in battle reduced fear enhanced coordination, and strengthened mental resilience. Fear became manageable because it was shared, and courage became a habit reinforced by collective trust. Rituals and routines contributed to mental fortitude. Daily marches, repetitive drills, and strict adherence to camp routines created predictability. Even in a life filled with uncertainty, soldiers learned to find comfort in structure, reinforcing the psychological capacity to cope with chaos when it inevitably arrived. These rituals, from sharpening weapons to marching formations, subtly trained attention, patience, and the ability to function efficiently under stress. Simulated combat played a critical role in conditioning. Soldiers repeatedly experienced the sights, sounds, and physicality of battle in controlled settings, the rhythmic clashing of training weapons, the coordinated movement of formations, and the controlled chaos of mock skirmishes allowed the mind to habituate to stress. Over time, this simulation built confidence, reduced anxiety, and ingrained automatic responses that could be relied upon in real conflict. Pain tolerance was another facet of mental resilience. Soldiers learned to interpret discomfort as a signal to persist rather than to retreat. Whether it was the burn of running, the sting of weapon strikes during drills, or the ache of heavy armor, repeated exposure allowed soldiers to distinguish between manageable pain and danger. This distinction was crucial. It prevented fear or fatigue from undermining performance, transforming the body's limitations into disciplined endurance. Decision-making under pressure was cultivated alongside fear management. Soldiers learned to evaluate situations rapidly, execute pre-learned tactics, and maintain situational awareness despite fatigue, confusion, and danger. Spartan soldiers relied on instinct refined through repetitive exposure to hardship, while Romans relied on systematic training, structured formations, and mental rehearsal. Both approaches enhanced the mind's ability to remain calm, analyze, and act effectively in the most demanding conditions. Psychological resilience extended to the acceptance of mortality. Spartans were taught that dying for the state was honorable and that fear of death must not dictate action. Romans reinforced the idea that the soldier's duty, training, and unit cohesion were more important than individual hesitation. Exposure to the concept of death, not as abstract fear, but as a practical reality, reduced panic, enhanced focus, and allowed the soldier to act decisively even when risk was present. Training also reinforced adaptability. Soldiers faced changing terrain, unpredictable enemy tactics, and environmental challenges. Mental resilience included flexibility of thought, the ability to adjust to new circumstances, maintain composure, and continue to execute training under unfamiliar conditions. Cognitive flexibility, combined with physical conditioning, created a soldier capable of functioning in complex, high-stress environments. Imagine now, dear friend, a soldier standing quietly on the training ground. Sweat clings to his brow, muscles ache, yet his mind is calm, focused, and precise. Around him, comrades move in rhythm, signals are exchanged, formations shift seamlessly. Fear is present, but managed. Fatigue presses on the body, but does not dominate the mind. Each breath, each movement, each thought has been trained into a pattern of resilience. The soldier is strong, capable, and centered. This psychological mastery, the harmonization of mind, body, and environment, is what allowed ancient soldiers to endure campaigns, survive battles, and perform extraordinary feats. Strength, skill, and endurance alone were insufficient. The mind had to be conditioned to withstand fear, chaos, uncertainty, and exhaustion. Mental resilience, cultivated through repetition, exposure, trust, and discipline, was the unseen backbone of the ancient warrior. As you let this vision flow, dear friend, allow the rhythm of training, the calm composure of disciplined soldiers, and the quiet confidence of mental resilience to wash over your mind. The repeated drills, structured routines, and collective trust create a hypnotic cadence, a steady pulse that soothes as it instructs. The mind drifts gently through the lessons of endurance, discipline, and calm focus, understanding how these soldiers became extraordinary, not only in body but in spirit. And so, dear friend, psychological conditioning and mental resilience reveal a hidden aspect of ancient military mastery. Soldiers were trained not only to fight, but to remain calm under chaos, to endure discomfort without hesitation, to trust in their comrades, and to act decisively in life or death situations. Their mental strength, like their physical endurance, was cultivated, repeated, and perfected. And in imagining this, we find a quiet, hypnotic rhythm, a soft, lulling understanding of human potential, endurance, and focus. As we wander further into the lives of ancient soldiers, it becomes clear that the mastery of the body and mind was inseparable from the care of the body's basic needs. Strength, endurance, and resilience were built not only through weapons drills, marches, and formations, but also through what soldiers ate, how they rested, and the rhythms of daily life. Diet, recovery, and structured routines formed the invisible scaffolding that allowed Spartan, Roman, and other ancient warriors to perform extraordinary feats. Imagine, dear friend, the dawn of a Roman camp. The first light glints softly on rows of tents, the dew still clinging to blades of grass. Soldiers rise quietly, stretching stiff limbs, shaking off the remnants of a light, disciplined sleep. The day begins with rituals designed not only for readiness, but for endurance. Water is drawn, fires are kindled, and the smell of cooking fills the morning air. Breakfast is simple, a portion of hard bread, perhaps some porridge, occasionally with olive oil or cheese. Every bite provides fuel. Every morsel is measured to sustain energy over long hours of marching, drilling, and labor. In Sparta, the routine is harsher but equally deliberate. Boys and men eat modest portions, often designed to induce hunger as a form of resilience training. Food is functional, not indulgent. Meals are part of the broader rhythm of training, reinforcing discipline and endurance. The body adapts to limited intake, learning efficiency, stamina, and the ability to perform under physical stress. Hunger becomes not an enemy, but a teacher, training both body and mind to endure discomfort and maintain focus. Hydration, too, was a critical component. Soldiers were trained to manage water carefully, particularly on long marches or in harsh environments. Clean water was sought with diligence, stored and rationed strategically, and consumed mindfully. Dehydration was a constant threat, yet through discipline and experience, soldiers learned to optimize consumption, maintain energy, and avoid fatigue. Water, simple and essential, became a tool of survival, reinforcing mental clarity and bodily endurance. Recovery practices were subtle but consistent. Soldiers rested in shifts to ensure vigilance. Sleep was light, often brief, but sufficient to restore functionality. Naps, stretches, and quiet moments were integrated into camp routines, allowing the body to repair muscles, replenish energy stores, and maintain alertness. Recovery was not indulgent, it was calculated, purposeful, and synchronized with the demands of training and campaign life. Diet was carefully adapted to the activity of the day. Marching required carbohydrates for sustained energy, grains, bread, and occasionally dried fruits or legumes. Heavy labor, such as construction or siege preparation, required protein for muscle repair, salted meat, fish, and pulses. Romans often supplemented diets with wine diluted in water, both as hydration and caloric supplement. Each meal was a balance, designed to fuel the body optimally for the specific demands of training and preparation. In Sparta, meals were ritualized, often communal, reinforcing cultural cohesion and discipline. Boys and men ate together under supervision, learning moderation, endurance, and shared resilience. Food scarcity was sometimes used deliberately to train resourcefulness and patience. The body learned to operate efficiently under less than ideal conditions, and the mind learned to focus on purpose rather than comfort. The daily routine, rhythm, and structure were as important as diet. In Rome, the day began with light exercises, stretching, and drills. Soldiers practiced formations, weapons, and coordinated movement. Long marches or labor followed, often carrying heavy packs, constructing fortifications, or maintaining equipment. Meals punctuated the day, providing fuel and opportunities for brief rest. Even hygiene, cleaning armor, tending wounds, and maintaining personal cleanliness was part of the routine, reinforcing discipline and readiness. Spartan routines were more intense. Physical training, endurance runs, wrestling, spear drills, and communal exercises dominated the day. Meals were brief and functional. Rest was limited, often light and interspersed with drills or observation. Mental resilience was built alongside physical conditioning. Stoicism, attention, and focus were exercised continuously. The body and mind were constantly engaged, learning to endure, adapt, and perform under stress. Recovery after strenuous exertion was not neglected. Stretching, light movement, and massage were sometimes employed, particularly in Roman training. Soldiers learned to care for muscles, tendons, and joints to maintain longevity and performance. Injury management was crucial. Even minor wounds could impede the function of a soldier in the rigid structure of formations or prolonged campaigns. The balance of exertion and recovery created durable, enduring warriors capable of sustaining activity over long periods. Sleep cycles, though often interrupted by guard duty or camp rotation, were understood intuitively as essential. Soldiers learned to rest deeply, yet briefly, to awaken quickly, and to maintain alertness even when fatigued. The circadian rhythm of a camp, rising with dawn, active through daylight, maintaining vigilance at night, created a natural structure that reinforced both physical and mental resilience. The integration of diet, recovery, and daily routine extended to special training situations. For example, soldiers on long marches received rations calibrated for sustained energy. Dense bread, dried legumes, salted meat. Siege operations required bursts of high energy activity, followed by structured rest, hydration, and small meals. These practices ensured that the body remained capable of extreme exertion while minimizing the risk of collapse or injury. Physical conditioning was reinforced by routine movement. Soldiers carried weighted packs, practiced drills under resistance, and engaged in repetitive labor. This continuous, measured exertion strengthened muscles, reinforced endurance, and habituated the body to sustained effort. When combined with careful nutrition and recovery, the result was a body finely tuned to performance, capable of long marches, prolonged combat, and repetitive, high-intensity labor without premature exhaustion. Psychological benefits were embedded in these routines as well. The predictability of meals, training, and rest reinforced mental stability. Soldiers could anticipate energy needs, recovery periods, and workloads. Discipline was reinforced through structure, attention to detail, and ritualized practice. Mental resilience and composure were cultivated alongside physical endurance, creating soldiers who were prepared for the stress of both camp life and battle. Imagine now, dear friend, a camp at dusk. Soldiers finish their tasks, tending weapons, repairing armor, and preparing meals. Fires burn low, providing the warmth and soft illumination. Some sit quietly, stretching muscles or tending minor injuries. Others share brief conversations, reinforcing camaraderie and cohesion. The smell of cooking lingers, mixed with the faint scent of sweat, earth, and iron. Fatigue presses gently against the body, yet there is comfort in routine, in the rhythm of preparation and recovery, in the knowledge that diet, rest, and structure sustain endurance, skill, and resilience. Across cultures, Sparta, Rome, Egypt, Carthage, and beyond, the principles remain consistent. Food fuels the body, hydration sustains energy, structured rest repairs and restores, and routine instills discipline and mental clarity. Soldiers become attuned to their bodies, understanding the rhythm of exertion, hunger, fatigue, and recovery. The integration of diet, recovery, and daily routine transforms training into a holistic system that supports extraordinary endurance, strength, and resilience. As you let these rhythms unfold in your mind, dear friend, imagine the slow, hypnotic cadence of daily life in camp, the measured steps of soldiers, the careful preparation of meals, the quiet attentiveness to body and surroundings, all create a soothing, steady rhythm. The mind drifts gently, lulled by the sense of purpose, preparation, and calm discipline that underlies the extraordinary performance of these ancient warriors. And so, dear friend, we see that diet, recovery, and routine are not merely supportive. They are integral to the creation of exceptional soldiers. Strength, skill, endurance, and resilience are built and sustained through these practices. As you imagine the soft glow of fires, the measured activities of soldiers, and the quiet rhythm of camp life, let your own mind Relax, following the gentle cadence of preparation, care, and readiness. As we continue to explore the intricate life of the ancient soldier, it becomes evident that some of the most defining aspects of military training were not the battles themselves, nor even the mastery of weapons, but the long hours of marching, relentless endurance drills, and the heavy labor imposed by both preparation and discipline. These exercises tested not only physical strength, but mental resilience, forging soldiers capable of enduring hardship while remaining effective, coordinated, and alert. Imagine a Roman legion at first light, the air crisp and cool, dew clinging to the blades of grass. Soldiers rise from slumber in their tents, donning armor and adjusting packs that often weigh 20 to 30 kilograms. Their feet, sometimes blistered, sometimes hardened by repeated exposure, meet the ground with precision as the cohort prepares to march. The sound of synchronized footsteps creates a hypnotic rhythm, a cadence that echoes across the camp and beyond. This is not merely travel, it is a drill in endurance, discipline, and unity. The march itself is an intricate form of training. Soldiers carry full packs, shields, weapons, and essential gear, moving over varied terrain, hills, rivers, rocky paths, and muddy plains. The weight of equipment tests muscular endurance, posture, and balance. The distance, sometimes exceeding 20 kilometers or more, strengthens cardiovascular stamina and fortifies mental resilience. Every step, every stride is repeated, refined, and ingrained into habit. Fatigue is inevitable, but it is welcomed as part of the transformation from ordinary man to extraordinary soldier. Spartans, though differing in methodology, practiced similar endurance drills. Young warriors ran barefoot over rough terrain, scaled hills, and traversed uneven ground while carrying minimal equipment, all to cultivate agility, resilience, and adaptability. The purpose was twofold: to harden the body and to condition the mind to accept hardship as normal. The repeated exposure to discomfort ensured that fear, fatigue, and minor injuries would not compromise effectiveness when facing an enemy. Forced labor was another critical component of endurance and conditioning. Roman soldiers constructed roads, bridges, fortifications, and camps, often under tight schedules and harsh conditions. This labor was functional. It created infrastructure for military campaigns while simultaneously conditioning the body, lifting stones, moving timber, digging trenches, and erecting defensive works strengthened muscles, built stamina, and honed coordination. Repetition made movements instinctual, integrating physical strength with mental focus. Spartans, too, incorporated labor into their daily routines. Though often framed as skill-building exercises, they learned to manipulate tools, maintain weapons, and perform physically demanding tasks as part of broader training. The objective was not merely practical, it was transformational, teaching endurance, self-reliance, and composure under strain. Labor and drills intertwined with combat preparation, creating a seamless blend of physical, mental, and tactical conditioning. Endurance drills included not only marching and labor, but repetitive exercises designed to test stamina and fortitude. Soldiers ran with weighted packs, performed obstacle courses, and engaged in repetitive combat drills that pushed muscles and cardiovascular capacity to their limits. Each drill emphasized rhythm, coordination, and controlled exertion. Through repetition, fatigue became familiar, and soldiers learned to maintain precision and composure even as exhaustion pressed upon their bodies. Mental fortitude developed alongside physical endurance. Marching over long distances, often with little rest, required focus, patience, and self-regulation. Soldiers learned to silence complaints, control breathing, and maintain a steady pace. Forced labor and repetitive drills reinforced perseverance. They taught soldiers to embrace discomfort as a natural state and to operate effectively regardless of external conditions. These experiences built confidence, self-control, and the ability to respond calmly under stress. Terrain amplified the challenge. Soldiers practiced endurance drills over hills, forests, rivers, and open plains. Each environment demanded adaptation, careful footing, strategic pacing, and efficient energy expenditure. They learned to distribute weight in packs to avoid imbalance, maintain posture under fatigue, and adjust movements in response to uneven surfaces. Adaptability became second nature, ensuring that soldiers could maintain effectiveness across diverse battlefields and campaign conditions. The integration of drills and labor created rhythm and structure. Soldiers developed an intuitive understanding of pacing, energy management, and teamwork. Marches required synchronization within units, ensuring that no soldier lagged or rushed ahead. Labor required coordinated effort, precision, and mutual support. The repetition of these routines instilled discipline, reinforced muscle memory, and habituated soldiers to function as cohesive units under both controlled and unpredictable conditions. Psychological benefits were equally profound. The monotony and physical strain of long marches and forced labor trained attention, patience, and focus. Soldiers learned to endure boredom, repetition, and discomfort without frustration. Mental resilience was reinforced as the mind became accustomed to managing exertion and maintaining performance despite fatigue. The capacity to operate under pressure, a hallmark of elite soldiers, was thus cultivated long before engagement with the enemy. Cultural differences shaped the specifics of endurance training. Spartan soldiers emphasized minimal support, developing resilience through deprivation and exposure to extreme physical challenges. Roman soldiers relied on structured progression, systematic pacing, and careful integration of labor and drills to build both strength and stamina. In each case, the principle was universal: sustained, repetitive, and controlled exertion created bodies and minds capable of extraordinary performance. Endurance drills also included exercises designed for specific combat readiness. Soldiers practiced advancing while maintaining formation, carrying shields and weapons, climbing obstacles, and moving under simulated attack. Each repetition reinforced coordination, timing, and the ability to maintain effectiveness under physical and mental stress. Soldiers learned to move as one, reacting instinctively to commands and the subtle shifts of comrades, while fatigue tested both body and mind. Imagine now, dear friend, a column of soldiers moving through a misty morning landscape. Their steps are synchronized, packs heavy on their backs, weapons ready, eyes focused yet calm. The terrain is challenging, the march exhausting, yet each soldier moves with rhythm and purpose. Sweat beads on brows, muscles burn, and lungs strain, but the mind remains composed, disciplined, and alert. The sound of synchronized footsteps and the occasional barked order creates a hypnotic cadence, reinforcing unity and endurance. Forced labor complements this mental and physical conditioning. Soldiers working together to construct fortifications, repair roads, or carry heavy materials develop coordination, problem solving, and collective strength. The integration of labor, drills, and endurance marching ensures that the body is continuously trained for strength, stamina, and adaptability, while the mind is reinforced in resilience, focus, and composure. Through these practices, ancient soldiers became extraordinary, not merely through skill with weapons, but through the disciplined, repeated mastery of endurance, marching, labor, and repetitive drills trained the body to move efficiently under stress and the mind to remain calm under fatigue. The soldier became a machine of coordinated strength, stamina, and attention, capable of sustained operation across harsh terrain and prolonged campaigns. As you imagine these scenes, dear friend, let the rhythm of marching feet, the sound of coordinated labor, and the slow, steady flow of repetitive drills wash over your mind. The cadence is soothing, the movements hypnotic, the harmony between body, mind, and collective effort calming. Picture soldiers advancing in synchronized motion, lifting, digging, and marching as a single, flowing system of endurance, discipline, and resilience. And so, dear friend, the combination of marching, endurance drills, and forced labor emerges as a central pillar of ancient military training. These exercises strengthened muscles, built cardiovascular endurance, honed mental resilience, and reinforced unity. The repeated, rhythmic exertion transformed ordinary men into extraordinary soldiers, capable of enduring fatigue, stress, and adversity while maintaining precision, composure, and effectiveness. In imagining this, you feel both fascination and calm, the hypnotic cadence of disciplined effort repeated endlessly, shaping body and mind alike. As we continue our journey into the lives of ancient soldiers, we now focus on a domain that intertwines physical skill, mental resilience, and instinctive precision. Advanced combat drills and sparring techniques. These exercises were not mere practice, they were the crucible in which raw strength, weapon mastery, endurance, and reflexes coalesced into lethal effectiveness. Through repeated, structured drills, soldiers learned to fight with fluidity, coordination, and instinct, preparing them for the chaos of the battlefield. Imagine, dear friend, a training ground at first light. The air is cool and still, the earth firm beneath bare or sandaled feet. Soldiers stand in lines, eyes focused, bodies coiled like springs. Weapons glint softly in the early sun. Spears, swords, shields, and daggers. Every soldier is paired with a partner, ready to engage in controlled, yet intense, combat practice. The rhythm is deliberate, each movement rehearsed, each strike calculated, each parry precise. These are the moments where training becomes both art and science. Spartan training emphasized realism fused with controlled discipline. Sparring was often conducted in small groups or pairs, simulating the conditions of battle while preserving safety. Warriors practiced spear thrusts, shield blocks, wrestling maneuvers, and close-quarter combat, all under the watchful eyes of instructors who corrected posture, timing, and technique. Each repetition honed reflexes, coordination, and stamina. Pain and fatigue were incorporated as teachers. A muscle burning from repeated thrusts or a shoulder aching from shield pressure trained the body to endure discomfort without losing focus. Roman soldiers approached advanced combat drills with systematic precision. The legion emphasized versatility. Soldiers trained with multiple weapons: gladius, pilum, dagger, and spear, and learned to transition fluidly between offensive and defensive techniques. Drills were highly repetitive, designed to create automatic responses under stress. Soldiers practiced in formation, synchronizing movement with comrades, integrating strikes, thrusts, blocks, and parries into a cohesive flow. The mental component was as critical as the physical. The soldier learned to anticipate, react, and execute decisions instinctively. Sparring was both an individual and collective endeavor. Paired drills allowed soldiers to test reflexes, timing, and judgment against a moving, resisting opponent. Larger group drills simulated the ebb and flow of battle, requiring soldiers to maintain formation, communicate silently, and adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Each drill reinforced muscle memory, spatial awareness, and composure under pressure. Soldiers learned not only to strike effectively, but also to observe, predict, and respond with minimal hesitation. The progression of drills was gradual, yet relentless. Beginners started with controlled movements, focusing on form and balance. As proficiency increased, intensity and complexity rose. Soldiers were encouraged to exert themselves, testing endurance and skill simultaneously. Advanced exercises integrated multiple weapons, defensive maneuvers, and complex patterns of attack and counterattack. The repetition of these sequences created instinctive reactions, allowing soldiers to perform under fatigue, stress, or chaos. Weapons integration was central to advanced drills. Spartans practiced spear and shield coordination, understanding how each movement influenced the other. Roman soldiers moved fluidly between gladius strikes and pilum throws, often transitioning mid-drill between ranged and close-quarter combat. Shields were not only defensive tools, but extensions of the body, requiring continuous adjustment, stability, and synchronization with footwork and strikes. Mastery of weapons was inseparable from the mastery of posture, movement, and balance. Mental focus was cultivated alongside physical skill. Drills emphasized awareness, the position of the opponent, the orientation of the body, the timing of strikes and blocks, and the coordination with comrades. Soldiers learned to maintain calm under simulated stress, to assess risks quickly, and to execute techniques efficiently. Advanced sparring required not only strength and agility, but observation, anticipation, and decision-making, skills critical for survival in real battle. Wrestling and grappling were often integrated into combat drills. Spartans, in particular, emphasized unarmed techniques alongside weapons practice. Soldiers learned throws, holds, and escapes, developing core strength, flexibility, and close-quarter combat skills. Romans also incorporated wrestling into training, though often as part of broader martial drills. integrating strikes, grappling, and weapon transitions. These exercises enhanced balance, proprioception, and control of both self and opponent. Drills were designed to simulate real battle conditions. Soldiers practiced in full armor, under fatigue, or while carrying weighted packs. Training in these conditions strengthened endurance, refined timing, and ensured that combat skills remained effective under the physical and psychological pressures of actual warfare. Fatigue, discomfort, and environmental factors were not obstacles, but deliberate tools to deepen skill, resilience, and instinct. Group coordination was reinforced through advanced drills. Soldiers learned to fight as individuals while maintaining formation, synchronizing attacks, and supporting their comrades. Movements were choreographed, yet flexible, allowing units to respond fluidly to changing circumstances. The collective aspect of sparring ensured that individual skill was amplified by teamwork, trust, and situational awareness. Soldiers learned that their effectiveness was not only measured by personal prowess, but also by their integration within the unit. Psychological resilience was further strengthened during sparring. The controlled risk of injury, the unpredictability of the partner's movements, and the challenge of executing techniques under fatigue created mental conditioning. Soldiers learned to remain calm under pressure, to recover quickly from mistakes, and to maintain confidence in their abilities. This mental fortitude was critical on the battlefield, where errors could be fatal, and composure under stress determined survival. Advanced drills also included timing and rhythm exercises. Soldiers practiced synchronized strikes, alternating attacks and defenses, and flowing sequences of movement. The coordination of timing reinforced instinctive reactions, spatial awareness, and precise execution. Rhythm became a form of mental meditation. As movements repeated, the body and mind entered a state of focused calm, ready to respond naturally to unpredictable threats. In some cultures, mock duels and competitive sparring were integrated to refine skill under pressures. Soldiers were paired to test reflexes, strategy, and endurance against resisting opponents. The competitive element encouraged attention, adaptation, and tactical thinking. While controlled, these exercises replicated elements of real combat, preparing soldiers for both the physical and psychological challenges of battle. Imagine now, dear friend, a line of soldiers moving fluidly across a training ground. Spears thrust in unison, shields rise and fall, swords strike with precise arcs, and bodies shift in rhythm. Partners spar, testing reflexes and balance. The repetition of strikes, blocks, and counterattacks creates a hypnotic cadence, a flowing pattern of movement that is at once disciplined and dynamic. Sweat glistens, muscles ache, yet minds remain focused, calm, and alert. Every motion reinforces skill, endurance, and instinct, preparing body and mind for the unpredictability of the battlefield. These advanced drills, repeated endlessly, transform soldiers into instinctive warriors. Reflexes become automatic, decisions rapid, and execution precise. Physical skill merges seamlessly with mental acuity, endurance, and composure. Soldiers trained in these methods are not merely strong, they are fluid, adaptive, and prepared for any challenge. Combat becomes a form of rhythm and flow, a disciplined dance in which survival and effectiveness are inseparable from mastery of body and mind. Across cultures, Spartan, Roman, Egyptian, and beyond, the principles of advanced combat drills were remarkably consistent. Repetition, intensity, realism, and mental focus. Each exercise integrated skill, endurance, and mental resilience, forging warriors capable of extraordinary performance. The combination of individual mastery and coordinated teamwork amplified effectiveness, creating soldiers who were both precise and adaptable, resilient under stress, and capable of responding instinctively to chaos. As you let this vision settle in your mind, dear friend, imagine the hypnotic rhythm of advanced drills, the rise and fall of shields, the thrust of spears, the arc of swords, the shifting bodies, and the steady cadence of coordinated movement all create a calming, almost lulling sensation. Through repetition, focus, and flow, soldiers become instruments of both discipline and instinct, and your mind drifts gently with the rhythm of their training. And so, dear friend, advanced combat drills and sparring techniques reveal the fusion of strength, skill, endurance, mental focus, and teamwork. Soldiers were trained to act instinctively, adapt fluidly, and maintain composure under fatigue, stress, and danger. In imagining this, we glimpse the quiet, hypnotic power of repetition and rhythm, a soothing cadence that echoes across the training grounds of Sparta, Rome, and beyond. As we continue exploring the lives of ancient soldiers, we move now into a domain where physical strength, tactical skill, and mental resilience intersect in particularly demanding ways. Siege training and specialized operations, while marching, endurance drills, and combat prepared soldiers for open field battles. Siege operations demanded unique skills, prolonged effort, and extraordinary coordination. Siege training was both strategic and physical, teaching soldiers to overcome obstacles, manipulate complex machinery, and sustain performance under relentless pressure. Imagine, dear friend, a fortified city looming on a hill, walls rising high against the morning sun. Soldiers assemble quietly at the base, their minds and bodies honed through countless drills. The task is immense: to breach walls, overcome gates, and neutralize defenders while under the constant threat of arrows, rocks, and boiling oil. This is the arena of specialized operations, a space where ingenuity, endurance, and courage converge. Roman legions were especially renowned for their engineering and siege expertise. Soldiers trained in constructing and deploying siege engines, such as ballistae, onagers, battering rams, and towers. Each machine required precise assembly, coordination among teams, and repetitive drills to ensure efficiency under stress. Soldiers learned to lift, balance, and maneuver heavy beams, to position slings and catapults accurately, and to operate in synchronized effort with comrades. The physical demands were immense, yet these drills also reinforced teamwork, rhythm, and mental focus. In addition to machine operation, soldiers practiced assault techniques, scaling walls with ladders, digging trenches to undermine fortifications, and coordinating attacks on gates required endurance, strength, and precision. Repetition made each movement instinctive. Placing a ladder, bracing a ram, hoisting a rope, or carrying heavy stones became second nature. The mind learned to anticipate resistance, coordinate with comrades, and act calmly under the threat of enemy action. Spartans approached siege training differently. Though less focused on elaborate machinery, they emphasized strategy, improvisation, and resilience. Soldiers learned to exploit weaknesses in fortifications, apply concentrated force, and adapt to evolving conditions. Physical conditioning supported these operations. Climbing, lifting, breaking barriers, and executing precise movements under fatigue were drilled repeatedly. Mental resilience was reinforced through exposure to discomfort, uncertainty, and controlled risk. Carthaginian and Egyptian armies also cultivated specialized siege skills. Soldiers trained to operate under harsh environmental conditions, navigate obstacles, and coordinate large-scale assaults. Precision and teamwork were emphasized, as even a minor miscalculation could result in injury or mission failure. Soldiers learned to maintain focus, conserve energy, and respond adaptively to unexpected challenges. Each rehearsal prepared both body and mind for the intense demands of prolonged operations. Siege training was not purely about brute strength. It required balance, coordination, and technical skill. Maneuvering ladders, positioning engines, and hauling heavy stones involved precise calculations of weight, leverage, and stability. Soldiers learned to distribute effort efficiently, maintain posture under strain, and integrate timing with team members. Through repetition, these complex sequences became instinctive, allowing soldiers to perform under pressure with accuracy and confidence. Endurance was critical. Sieges could last days, weeks, or months. Soldiers practiced sustained exertion while carrying heavy materials, standing for prolonged periods, and engaging in repetitive tasks. This conditioning extended beyond muscles to the cardiovascular system and, crucially, to mental resilience. Soldiers learned to remain vigilant, manage fatigue, and maintain composure over extended periods. The combination of physical and psychological conditioning created individuals capable of performing extraordinary feats over time. Specialized operations often required stealth, strategy, and adaptability. Reconnaissance, sabotage, and ambush tactics demanded careful observation, patience, and precise execution. Soldiers trained in these skills developed heightened situational awareness, quick decision-making, and an understanding of timing. Drills simulated the conditions of restricted visibility, difficult terrain, and the necessity of silent, coordinated action. Each exercise strengthened confidence, focus, and adaptability. Psychological conditioning was deeply intertwined with siege training. The threat of injury or death, the prolonged exposure to stress, and the necessity of coordinated action under pressure reinforced mental resilience. Soldiers learned to tolerate fear, maintain focus, and trust in their training and comrades. Exposure to controlled risk allowed them to develop courage and composure, preparing them for the unpredictability of actual sieges. Imagine now, dear friend, a team of soldiers assembling a towering siege engine. The air hums with coordinated effort. Ropes tighten, beams are lifted, wheels adjusted, and levers set. Each movement is precise, practiced countless times. Sweat glistens, muscles strain, yet minds are calm, focused, and attuned to the rhythm of action. Nearby, comrades scale ladders, haul stones, and prepare battering rams. The hypnotic cadence of repeated, synchronized effort creates a sense of harmony amid the intensity, a flow of energy that combines strength, skill, and mental acuity. Advanced drills also included simulated attacks on fortifications. Soldiers practiced breaching gates, scaling walls under mock defenses, and coordinating multi-layered operations. Timing, anticipation, and communication were essential. Repetition embedded these skills deeply, ensuring that execution under real conditions would be precise, efficient, and instinctive. Physical exertion was complemented by strategic thinking, reinforcing the integration of body, mind, and team. Recovery and sustenance were essential during siege training. Soldiers learned to manage energy, hydrate strategically, and pace exertion across prolonged drills. Meals, hydration, and rest were integrated into the rhythm of work, teaching the importance of conservation and efficiency. Mental focus was maintained through structured routines, rhythmical repetition, and coordinated teamwork. The body learned to sustain effort, the mind learned to endure uncertainty, and the team learned to function seamlessly as a unit. Across cultures, the principles of siege training and specialized operations reveal a remarkable consistency. Preparation, repetition, coordination, endurance, and the mental resilience. Whether in Sparta, Rome, Carthage, or Egypt, soldiers practiced the complex interplay of physical skill, tactical acumen, and psychological focus. Each drill, each repetition, and each exercise created individuals and teams capable of extraordinary performance under sustained stress. Imagine, dear friend, a siege in motion. Soldiers lifting massive beams, rolling battering rams, adjusting catapults, climbing walls, and coordinating attacks in rhythm with each other. The energy flows as a synchronized pulse, a hypnotic cadence of effort, skill, and focus. Fatigue presses, yet minds remain calm, movements precise, and the team unified. The combination of strength, endurance, coordination, and resilience creates a seamless system of human capability, prepared to meet any challenge. And so, dear friend, siege training and specialized operations reveal the depth and complexity of ancient military preparation. Soldiers were conditioned to endure, adapt, and perform with precision under pressure. Strength, skill, endurance, mental focus, and teamwork coalesced in drills that simulated the most demanding aspects of warfare. As you imagine the rhythm of their effort, the flow of coordinated movement, and the calm composure under exertion, let your own mind drift gently, lulled by the hypnotic cadence of disciplined human endeavor. As we continue our exploration of ancient military mastery, we now shift our attention to the unique and dynamic world of cavalry training and mounted warfare. Unlike infantry, cavalry required the harmonious coordination of body, mind, and horse, a partnership built through careful training, trust, and rhythm. These mounted warriors combined speed, mobility, and force, transforming the battlefield with their ability to strike, maneuver, and respond with precision. Imagine, dear friend, a grassy plain at dawn, mist curling softly across the ground. Horses breathe in the cool air, nostrils flaring, muscles rippling beneath glistening coats. Riders mount with ease, their bodies poised, balance honed through countless drills. Each movement is deliberate, each posture precise. The horse and rider move as one organism, a blend of instinct, discipline, and practiced skill. This is the essence of mounted warfare, a partnership between human and animal, honed through repetition and careful conditioning. Spartans, though famed primarily for their infantry, trained select cavalry units with rigor. Riders learned to maintain balance while wearing armor, managing weapons, and maneuvering at speed. Early drills focused on controlling the horse, maintaining posture, and responding to commands. Later exercises introduced weapons, spears, swords, and javelins. Each maneuver emphasized timing, precision, and coordination, ensuring that rider and horse acted seamlessly in the chaos of battle. Roman cavalry training was comprehensive, emphasizing both individual skill and unit coordination. Soldiers practiced mounted maneuvers, spear thrusts, and coordinated charges. Drills included advancing, retreating, and flanking in formation, maintaining spacing, rhythm, and alignment. Cavalry units trained to integrate with infantry, supporting flanks, pursuing fleeing enemies, or disrupting formations. The training created soldiers capable of rapid, effective action while sustaining control of powerful animals under stress. Mounts themselves underwent conditioning. Horses were trained gradually to tolerate armor, noise, sudden movements, and combat environments. Repetition desensitized them to chaos. Shouting, clashing weapons, and dust-filled air became familiar. Riders learned to anticipate reactions, maintain composure, and communicate subtly with reins, legs, and body weight. The synchronization of horse and rider became instinctive, a partnership that multiplied the effectiveness of both. Endurance was a key focus. Cavalry soldiers practiced long rides across varied terrain, carrying equipment, weapons, and supplies. Their muscles, balance, and cardiovascular systems were developed to sustain rapid movement over extended periods. Horses were similarly conditioned, building stamina, speed, and responsiveness. Through repetition, both rider and mount developed the ability to operate effectively over hours or even days, a critical advantage in campaigns and prolonged battles. Combat drills included charges, flanking maneuvers, and precise timing exercises. Soldiers practiced thrusting spears or swords while riding at speed, maintaining formation and responding to unexpected obstacles or enemy action. Coordination with fellow riders was essential. Spacing, alignment, and timing had to be precise. Advanced drills emphasized fluidity, adaptability, and instinctive response, training cavalry to operate as cohesive units while retaining individual control. Mental resilience was reinforced throughout cavalry training. Riders learned to remain calm under speed, chaos, and risk. The unpredictability of both horse and battlefield demanded focus, anticipation, and quick decision-making. Soldiers were exposed to simulated combat conditions repeatedly, desensitizing them to fear and reinforcing confidence. The mind and body became synchronized, enabling rapid, precise action even in highly stressful situations. Integration with other forces was also practiced. Cavalry supported infantry by scouting, flanking, harassing, and pursuing. Drills emphasized communication, timing, and awareness of battlefield dynamics. Cavalry had to anticipate the movements of both allies and enemies, responding in harmony with broader tactical objectives. Through repeated exercises, soldiers developed intuition, strategic awareness, and the ability to adapt fluidly to shifting conditions. Weapon mastery from horseback required specialized drills, spear thrusts, javelin throws, sword strikes, and defensive maneuvers were practiced at speed with repeated emphasis on balance, timing, and control. Repetition allowed actions to become instinctive, freeing the mind to anticipate threats, evaluate opportunities, and maintain coordination with both horse and unit. Precision and fluidity were the hallmarks of effective mounted combat. Advanced training also incorporated environmental challenges. Soldiers practiced riding over hills, through forests, across rivers, and on uneven ground. Horses and riders learned to maintain stability, speed, and control despite obstacles. These drills reinforced adaptability, physical coordination, and mental resilience, ensuring that cavalry could operate effectively in diverse terrains, weather conditions, and tactical scenarios. Cavalry units often trained with mock skirmishes. Riders engaged in simulated combat against each other, practicing offensive and defensive maneuvers, unit cohesion, and rapid decision-making. The unpredictability of these exercises reinforced mental alertness, instinctive reaction, and trust in both mount and comrades. Through repetition, soldiers learned to maintain composure, focus, and effectiveness even under rapidly changing conditions. Imagine now, dear friend, a line of riders advancing across a foggy plain. The rhythmic pounding of hooves creates a steady, hypnotic cadence. Spears are leveled, swords ready, eyes focused. The horses move in coordinated motion, each rider adjusting subtly to maintain spacing, speed, and alignment. The synchronization of human and animal, individual skill, and unit cohesion creates a seamless flow of energy, strength, and precision. The mind becomes absorbed in rhythm, movement, and calm focus. Training was not purely physical. It included observation, strategy, and anticipation. Riders learned to read the terrain, predict enemy movement, and coordinate timing with allied forces. Mental acuity was as critical as balance or strength, ensuring that cavalry could operate effectively both independently and as part of larger maneuvers. Skill, endurance, and resilience were fused into a fluid, instinctive capability. Across cultures, cavalry training shared common principles: repetition, coordination, endurance, precision, mental resilience, and integration with broader forces. Whether Spartan, Roman, Persian, or Carthaginian, soldiers learned that mounted warfare demanded harmony of body, mind, and animal. Each drill, maneuver, and exercise reinforced partnership, focus, and effectiveness under stress. As you let these images settle in your mind, dear friend, imagine the hypnotic rhythm of hooves striking the earth, the coordinated movement of riders, and the flow of precise, fluid maneuvers, the synchronization of horse and rider, the repetition of drills, and the calm composure under exertion create a soothing cadence. Your mind drifts gently with the rhythm of movement, focus, and disciplined effort. And so, dear friend, cavalry training and mounted warfare reveal a unique fusion of strength, skill, endurance, mental focus, and partnership with animals. Soldiers were trained to act instinctively, adapt fluidly, and maintain composure under fatigue, stress, and danger. In imagining this, we glimpse the quiet, mesmerizing power of repetition, coordination, and rhythmic flow, a soft, lulling understanding of human and equine potential in harmony. As we arrive at the culmination of our journey through the lives of ancient soldiers, it is essential to consider not only the physical and mental conditioning, the drills, endurance, and weapon mastery, but also the subtle yet powerful threads that wove meaning, motivation, and identity into every act of training, rituals, rewards, and the culture of honor. These intangible elements were as critical as any weapon, march, or drill. They imbued soldiers with purpose, loyalty, and pride, transforming repetition and hardship into a coherent, motivating structure that sustained performance and morale. Imagine, dear friend, a Spartan barracks at dawn. The young warriors rise in silence, performing the familiar routines of exercise, diet, and endurance. Yet even these physical actions are framed by ritual. Greetings, gestures, and commands are performed with precision. Drills are not merely functional, they are symbolic affirmations of discipline, obedience, and unity. Each repetition reinforces identity. I am Spartan, I am strong, I endure, I serve. The ritual itself becomes hypnotic, embedding resilience, focus, and calm into body and mind. Rewards and recognition were woven into this structure. In Sparta, physical prowess, endurance, courage, and skill were celebrated publicly. Victories in wrestling, spear drills, or running contests earned respect and honor, reinforcing social cohesion and encouraging continued excellence. Even minor achievements were noted, mastering a difficult maneuver, enduring a longer march, or performing flawlessly in formation, strengthened confidence and reinforced desired behaviors. Recognition was both social and internal, a quiet satisfaction of accomplishment combined with the approval of peers and instructors. Romans, too, cultivated a culture of honor, decorations, commendations, and the promise of promotion inspired soldiers to exceed expectations. Soldiers learned that their discipline, skill, and endurance were observed and valued. Rewards were not always material. They included status, reputation, and the acknowledgement of competence. This reinforced motivation, making repetition, hardship, and exertion meaningful. Each act of discipline and endurance became a building block in the edifice of personal and collective honor. Ritual extended beyond individual achievement. Soldiers participated in ceremonies, salutes, and formations that symbolized unity, loyalty, and the greater purpose of military service. These rituals, repeated daily or at key moments, reinforced identity and focus. The cadence of drills, the synchronized movement of formations, and the shared experiences of hardship became symbolic acts, embedding resilience, coordination, and calm within the collective consciousness of the unit. Cultural narratives amplified the effect. Spartan society revered courage, endurance, and the sacrifice of the individual for the state. Boys were taught from youth that death in battle was honorable, failure shameful, and perseverance virtuous. Roman soldiers internalized the values of duty, loyalty, and strategic competence. These cultural stories transformed training from physical repetition into a moral and existential framework. Every march, every drill, every exertion contributed to a larger narrative of purpose and identity. Rituals also structured transitions, milestones, and progression. Initiation ceremonies marked entry into training or full military service. Tests of endurance, skill, and courage served as rites of passage. These formalized events embedded psychological resilience, social cohesion, and personal pride. Soldiers emerged not only stronger and more capable, but also socially recognized and psychologically validated. The mind internalized success and discipline, reinforcing future performance. Rewards and incentives were closely tied to performance under stress. In sparring, endurance drills, and siege training, soldiers were often observed and assessed. Mastery of a particularly difficult skill, flawless execution under fatigue, or courage in simulated danger earned praise, elevated status, or symbolic rewards. This reinforced the integration of effort, resilience, and skill into a recognizable, motivating system. Psychological reinforcement was as critical as physical conditioning. Group cohesion, a hallmark of ancient military cultures, was reinforced through ritualized acts, shared meals, coordinated drills, and collective celebrations fostered trust, loyalty, and mutual accountability. Soldiers internalized the understanding that individual effort served the collective good. Honor was both personal and shared, a powerful motivator for sustained performance in the most demanding conditions. Imagine now, dear friend, a ceremony at sunset. Soldiers line up in formation, armor gleaming softly in the fading light. Instructors move slowly along the line, acknowledging effort, technique, and endurance. Words of encouragement, gestures of recognition, and subtle signs of approval are exchanged. The rhythmic cadence of movement, the shared focus, and the ritualized structure create a calming, hypnotic atmosphere. Pride, honor, and purpose flow quietly through each soldier, linking individual effort to collective identity. Even mundane routines contained elements of ritual, cleaning weapons, tending armor, arranging equipment, or performing daily marches were executed with precision, reverence, and repetition. These small acts reinforced discipline, attention to detail, and internalized pride. Soldiers learned to find meaning in repetition, beauty in coordination, and calm in structure. The mind and body harmonized through ritualized action, creating resilience, focus, and poise. The culture of honor also extended to preparation for battle. Soldiers internalized stories of legendary warriors, victories, and the virtues of courage, loyalty, and perseverance. These narratives were woven into drills, lessons, and rituals, embedding values that strengthened motivation and mental resilience. Fear was reframed as a natural challenge, endurance became a point of pride, and the body's exertion was transformed into an act of meaningful service. Rewards and recognition were further amplified through social acknowledgement, peer approval, shared experiences, and public commendations reinforced effort and resilience. Soldiers learned that their actions mattered not only for survival, but for reputation, identity, and belonging. This psychological reinforcement was as critical as physical conditioning, embedding motivation, focus, and perseverance deeply within both mind and body. Imagine, dear friend, the quiet reflection of a soldier at night. Fatigue presses, muscles ache, yet the mind is calm, aligned with purpose. Thoughts drift over the day's drills, endurance tests, and exercises. Recognition received, milestones achieved, and rituals completed form a tapestry of meaning. The repetition, hardship, and focus are transformed into pride, identity, and calm satisfaction. The rhythm of training, the cadence of rituals, and the quiet acknowledgement of effort create a hypnotic, soothing sense of fulfillment. Through rituals, rewards, and the culture of honor, ancient soldiers internalized discipline, resilience, and purpose. Physical exertion was reinforced by social, psychological, and cultural structures. Endurance, skill, and focus were elevated into meaningful acts, embedding calm confidence and steady composure. Soldiers were not only capable in body and mind, but also motivated, proud, and aligned with a larger purpose. Across Sparta, Rome, Carthage, and other military cultures, these principles held constant. Repetition, ritual, recognition, and honor amplified training, reinforced resilience, and cultivated calm focus. Every exercise, every march, every combat drill became a step in a larger journey of identity, purpose, and mastery. Soldiers emerged not only strong and capable, but confident, composed, and attuned to rhythm, discipline, and the unspoken poetry of collective effort. As you imagine these scenes, dear friend, let the rhythm of drills, the cadence of rituals, and the quiet flow of recognition and honor wash over your mind. The hypnotic repetition, combined with the calm satisfaction of purpose, creates a gentle, lulling cadence. Your thoughts drift softly, immersed in the steady pulse of disciplined human endeavor, and you feel the quiet power of endurance, skill, and meaningful effort. And so, dear friend, rituals, rewards, and the culture of honor reveal the intangible heart of ancient military training. Soldiers were strengthened not only in body and skill, but in identity, purpose, and calm confidence. Through repetition, recognition, and ritualized action, physical, mental, and social dimensions merged into a seamless whole, creating warriors capable of extraordinary endurance, focus, and composure. In imagining this, we find a hypnotic, soothing rhythm, a soft, lulling understanding of human potential, resilience, and honor. Now, with a smile on your face, you will have a good understanding of the way ancient soldiers trained their bodies and their minds, how they lived, fought, and endured, from the Spartans to the Romans, from Persians to Celts. Their lessons echo into modern times. But tonight, dear friend, let their story guide you gently into rest. You've walked the dusty roads of Rome, marched through Spartan fields, and carried the weight of history on your shoulders. It is time now to let go. Good night, dear friend. Sleep well, and I will see you next time.